Cracking. Morning all. Great to see so many here. Thank you for your patience and forbearance for the last meeting. My first one. Every day is a school day, steep learning curve. Just wanted to remind people the principles around how I'd like this committee to progress, because people are very complimentary about being so explicit on that. I'm really keen that the scrutiny committee is really positive in the spirit of how we can do things better, that we're a critical friend, and that things are done in a sort of positive manner, and that we do it from a sort of evidence-based approach. So really keen, if we, as we get into the substance more and more, if we can bear those in mind. As I say, in the spirit of every day being a school day at the moment for me and learning quite quickly, it seems to me over the last month that this scrutiny committee is going to become busier and busier, and I think my main effort is going to be juggling the work plan and making sure that we get you the right issues at the right time. I will do my best, but please do come back to me or us if you feel that's not happening. We genuinely have spent quite a lot of time, and I've been bugging Sophie and Colin quite a lot to try and get things done properly and at pace. But just to be aware of that, and we can talk about that later in the work plan. Chris, delighted to welcome you as Deputy Chair. I think you're very... You said you didn't want to introduce yourself, but you're welcome to. I'll leave the mic open for a moment. You're very welcome just to say a few things if you'd like to, but you're very welcome to this committee, and I've now got the donut of death, so I don't know whether that's my IT system or somebody else's.
Okay, Dom, thank you ever so much for that. Yeah, thank you for those that voted for me to be Vice Chair. Like Dom, I think this committee is going to be quite busy, increasingly so, with a lot of issues coming in a changing environment. To put a finer point on it, as you all know, I'm the Green County Councillor, or one of the Green County Councillors. I come into this with experience as a district councillor and member of the cabinet. Looking at with portfolios covering climate emergency mainly, although I have had performance management and planning. So I come with a little bit of experience, but my main experience is in environmental conservation and natural history, and that's where my forte is. Not only have I been around the world filming with David Attenborough on in areas of outstanding beauty, and seeing wildlife and the natural world impacted by human activity, let's say. But also I've got a postgrad diploma in energy, sustainable development and climate change as well. So I'm fairly scientifically minded on these things, and as Dom said earlier, I'm absolutely fully behind this committee acts as a critical friend to the council, and does so on an evidence-based platform. So thank you for that, Dom. Thank you for the slot. I wasn't prepared for it, but hopefully we can all get on and seek the truth, whatever the problems are, and let's, I'm very much more happy to put the party politics at the door, and let's see if we can make this county council the best it can be and the greenest it can be, in light of the climate emergency. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. You're very welcome. Apologies for bouncing into it. It was best intentions and late management rather than anything else. With no further ado, then we'll crack on. Apologies wise, I've got Councillor Vernon Smith, who's I will send our wishes to his son, who's just returned from a military operational tour and is getting married today, and Councillor Sajid Patel, who is unwell. Sophie, are you tracking any other apologies that I've missed?
No, everyone else is here.
Legendary. Item 2, declarations of interests around the house. I'll leave the mic open. Nothing.
Morning, John. Yeah, I suppose given the next item, I'd better declare all the way the outside bodies in relation to water and flood, Regional Flood Defence Committee can be. I better make that declaration now.
Bill, just for propriety, I'm sorry I got stuck in a reverb thing and didn't hear that. Could you just say it again, over?
Basically, it's the outside bodies that I sit on, the Severn and Wye Regional Flood Defence Committee, the Wessex Regional Flood Defence Committee, and as of last week, the Severn Estuary Partnership.
Bill, thank you. To my ill-educated ears, that sounds like a technical advantage rather than conflict of interest, but thank you for raising them. I'll assume there's nothing else unless... Chris?
Yeah, sorry, I don't think this is a conflict of interest, but I was one of those unfortunate residents that had flood water in my kitchen during last December and February as well. So, you know, obviously I would like us to reduce the flooding that takes place, but and my interests are only in that respect. But yeah, I thought I'd let you know so that you know where I'm coming from.
Chris, thank you. We'll make you an expert witness, Jill.
Can I just say that I also have been flooded in 2007 and in December recently, not to a huge extent, but it's significant.
Thank you, Jill. No other hands or pokey fingers or anything. We'll crack on then to item number 3, December 2020 flooding. And James, I think just to tee you up, where I'm coming from on this is really interested to move from looking in the rear view mirror what happened to what we can do better. And in particular, I'm really interested in the interagency stuff, moving beyond verbs like coordinate to you know, much more specific actions. And I think in particular useful to tease out the difference between lessons identified and lessons learned, and your thoughts on how things are progressing. I suppose I have a conflict of interest in the sense that we very, very nearly got flooded in Fairford, and I felt that we as an interagency team could have done a better job of having a plan that was signed off, that was communicated and staffed. So that's where I'm coming at it from. With no further ado, I think I saw you somewhere. James, over to you. There you are.
Many thanks, Chair. Morning all, and thanks again for the invitation for me to be able to come back and refer back to my previous presentation back in March. Sorry, I've got some code going on there. I don't know if it's perhaps if everybody could go on to mute, that would really help. Yeah, it's been an incredibly busy few months since December, but also since March when I last spoke to you. But it's been productive. It's been incredibly productive. And I think, Chair, your comment about moving away from words like coordination and collaboration and making sure it actually works, that's clearly demonstrated by what we've managed to achieve over the last few months. And when I say we, it's not just Gloucestershire County Council and not just the flood risk management team, it's everybody that we've been able to engage and work with. So agencies from Environment Agency, water and sewage companies, local community groups, local councils, the initial grouping of the debrief sessions that we had immediately after the event really helped to solidify some of those partnerships and really helped to identify where our respective areas of work can be greater than the sum of the whole. So these existing partnerships have been solidified, but that's not to say that there hasn't been new ones. Through the work that we've been doing since December and from the work that we do in response to every flooding event, we've found new partnerships that are really working, that are really starting to deliver actions on the ground. Something that was put in the agenda was where are we with the lessons learned? That was a key focus of my December report. these are all still relevant, and perhaps increasingly relevant as the frequency of these extreme weather events continues. I think two that really leap out at me are the situation with district revenue funding. I said quite clearly at the last meeting that we rely so heavily on district officers. Lawrence King in Stroud, in Forest of Dean and Cotswold, Tom Barrett in Stroud, Jason Westmoreland in Tewkesbury, Rebecca and Jackie in Cheltenham. These are people that are on the ground, that are taking local action. We need their local knowledge. We need their expertise. I feel that if as an extended team we're going to be successful, we need to be able to continue to rely on these district officers. And perhaps speaking out of turn here, but I think it's important to mention that. And the other one I think which has stuck with me is the issue of national framework funding. Just to refresh your memory, this is government money which is made available to local councils to distribute to people that have been affected by flooding, to carry out property flood resilience measures, so floodgates, non-return air valves, those kind of things. As I said before, the framework funding wasn't triggered for the December event. We had over 470 properties affected in Gloucestershire. That's significant. That's the most significant event since 2007. And if that doesn't provide sufficient justification for national funding to help these communities and individuals like Jill and Chris that have been affected, what does? I've discussed it at length with lead cabinet member and my line manager and our district colleagues and other RMA colleagues, and we all feel that the time is right for the way this framework funding is allocated to be changed. I feel that it should be directly allocated, ring-fenced for county councils that can demonstrate soon after a flooding event how many properties were affected, and if that trips a certain threshold, then that money is made available. We knew the extent of this flooding within a week of it happening. We knew it was the biggest event we'd seen for many years, and I feel that we were, as a county, and the communities and residents that we serve were let down by the lack of this funding. So I believe we're formulating an open letter on behalf of the English 7 and Y lead local flood authorities, and I'm going to be channeling it through ADEPT as well as a bit of a proposal for future events. I don't want to get stuck on that, but it's just two of the lessons learned that continue to be relevant. So what have we actually been doing? Well, we've got 30 different areas of project development and investigation. 20 of those are as a direct result of the December flooding. So these are ranging from initial investigations over what is the actual cause of the flooding, what are the flooding mechanisms and what can we do, up to we know what where the flooding came from. We know what needs to be done to help alleviate that. Where can we get the money? How can we get it designed? So of these new projects that we're working on, and I won't go through the whole list because we don't have enough time. It's primarily investigations, as I say, and the development of projects, but building on the partnerships that we developed soon after the December flooding and we've been working on for a number of years. We've convened a number of multi-agency groups, multi-agency partnerships, to looking at specific locations to see what everybody is doing, where there is potential for us to collaborate and where there's potential for us to pool resources. One example of this was we realised that the event impacted the Forest of Dean quite dramatically in a number of locations, and quite a lot of those 20 new areas we're working in are in the Forest of Dean. Going on a suggestion from Forestry England and Forest of Dean District Council, we convened a multi-agency partnership, the like of which has never been seen, We had over 14 different agencies, some of which we'd never been able to engage with before, sitting around a table. That was unfortunately delayed, but it is going to be reinstated, and invites will be going out to the original partners and a greater range of councillors as well, to try and keep momentum on that one. But that's something that, when it does happen, I think it's going to bear real fruit. And I think it's something that, if it works in the Forest of Dean, it could work in Cotswolds, it could work in Cheltenham Borough, Tewkesbury Borough, Gloucester City. And I think it's something that will be core to what we're doing as we move on. So, I mean, I say I'm not going to go into specifics, but I think it might be useful just to use one case study. I reported back in March that one of the communities that were the worst affected was Bleddington in the Cotswolds. Small village, beautiful village. If you've never been there, I highly recommend it. Over 29 properties were affected in the flooding in a small village. That's the worst hit community in the county. So very early on, I got in touch with the local flood group, which were commendably and highly welcome, were helping themselves. They'd pulled themselves together, they'd written a really good flood report, they'd started to engage the likes of ours and Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group. Building on that, we have convened a couple of multi-agency meetings to look at what the problem is and where we can work on it. One of the issues was flooding from the Westcote Brook, where the bank of the Westcote Brook had eroded. So we've carried out a topographical survey. We've currently got a design in development for repair of the bank. We've got a little bit of money that was earmarked by Councillor Moore before the election. So we're looking to hopefully progress repair of that bank and repair of an existing flood defence bund. Hopefully, God willing, this financial year, sorry. It may be delayed, but we will be able to proceed with the flood bund. As well as that, as I said at the last meeting, my particular interest and my belief in the future of flood risk management is looking at things in the round. We need to look at what's happening down here where communities are affected, but where's that water come from? We need to be concentrating on the headwaters and the upper catchments. So Bleddington is a good example of that. Whilst we're looking at this repair of a bank and slightly raising it, upstream, we've working with the District Council and Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group, we've engaged a landowner who is very, very open to using his land in a flood-friendly way. Initial discussions are natural flood management in the Gorcum Brook and the Westcote Brook, before it becomes main river, but also potentially creation of a wetland, which is something that I think will have a dramatic benefit on the amount of water that comes down the Westcote Brook and hits Bleddington. But also it will have huge benefits on biodiversity. It will have huge benefits on water quality, and it will also help amenity as well, because there are bridleways and footpaths running through this area. And I think this is a really good example, Bleddington, of how we're engaging communities, bringing agencies together, looking at what happens downstream, but concentrating on the potential upstream. So I'm particularly proud of that one. It's moving very quickly, and obviously the local community is very keen for action, which I think points back perhaps to the lessons learned that we as agencies and yourselves as Environment Scrutiny Committee, we need to be always mindful of not raising expectations falsely. When we engage with local groups and we say, well, yeah, we could do this, we could do that. The community wants to see action now, so we have to be careful not to promise more than we can deliver. That's not an excuse for not working hard and driving things as quickly as we can, but it is something that we need to be mindful of. I'm not sure on timing how much I had. I think Sophie said 10 to 15 minutes, so I estimate that's about 10. More than happy to take some questions, but what I will say more than anything else, I know it sounds like I'm repeating myself, but I'm exceedingly proud of my team. There's 6 of us, we're achieving a huge amount, but we wouldn't achieve 100th of what we're able to do without working with communities and the other agencies. So proud of my team, absolutely. Proud of the way that we work and engage with others, even more so, particularly the districts. And I think I'm aware in my vocation, and it's not a job, it's a vocation, I'm aware more than ever that what we're all doing is, it sounds like a bit of a cliche, but it is the cutting edge of climate change resilience. We are right there making a difference to how communities can deal with the climate emergency through real action and partnership. That's basically all I was going to say at the moment, but feel free to fire away any questions. I'm happy to take specific questions on specific areas if necessary.
James, fab, thank you to you and your team for that. We'll open it up to questions if you give me a wave or a hand up. Colin, I think, was gesticulating first. So Colin, over to you, and then we'll go to Alan and then to Chris. Colin. You're on mute, Colin. There's £1 for the charity pot.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to. I got on mute when we had the feedback, and sorry, I forgot to put it back on again. It's just basically just reiterate that the flooding that occurred, that really drew everyone's attention in December and January of just gone, was quite a different type of flooding to which we've normally experienced in the past. It was very much about very, very heavy rainfall and then very instant flooding caused through surface water runoff, which is not a regular occurrence. I think, in actual fact, it was only the River Cher, I think, that actually even burst its banks during that period. The normal river flooding that Gloucestershire experiences was not the issue in December and January. It was, and that's why, in many respects, the flooding occurred in places we've never ever seen it before, or for the first time, because the ground was absolutely saturated, and it was basically water just running off and had nowhere else to go, from hillsides, from farmland, and it's that sort of thing where over many years there was possibly ditches and that sort of thing that have gradually got filled in with detritus, or people wonder why on earth that ditch was there and just let it back filled in, or whatever the case, or even filled it in deliberately, because it didn't appear to provide a particular purpose, but it's actual fact that it was an intervention drain that was actually there, an intervention ditch, which just slowed the runoff. And I think that's one of the issues that obviously James and team are looking at, is that it's it hit everyone from left field, because it was a very different sort of flooding to what we're used to in Gloucestershire, which is basically fluvial flooding, river flooding.
Thanks, Colin. Alan, I think you're next, and then Chris after Alan.
Thanks, Chairman. James, thank you for the excellent report and all the good work that you and your team are doing, and the update on the forest. I'm interested to hear you say a greater range of councillors on the forest group, because this is the problem I had in the first place. So I would ask you to invite all the forest county councillors, including Phil Orford with his obvious expertise over the years, and the portfolio holder, Councillor Vernon Smith. But thank you again for all the work you've been doing.
I appreciate that, and thanks very much for the email exchanges that we've had, even as recently as this morning. I'll be in touch, give you a ring, and discuss focus, make sure that it's in line with what you think it should be. Thank you.
Chris, I think you're next, and then Roger. I think I spotted a finger. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dom. Colin, just for your information, rivers don't burst their banks. They actually just overspill their banks in the main when they flood. It's just a minor thing. I've been told off in the past for that. I've been working with James for a few months, if not a year, on the possibilities or the benefits of upper catchment natural flood management, and how we prevent flooding rather than pick up the costs of compensation and clear up. And I think we really do need to look at it in the round. Flooding is going to increase as global warming takes place, the atmosphere heats up, the waters heat up, the oceans heat up, and we get more evaporation, more clouds, more rain clouds, and of course, you know, with the weather patterns changing, there's a likelihood of intense rainfall, and that's increasing. What I'm aware of is that the people of Lydney and the people of Cinderford who were flooded last year are going to look at us and say, what the hell have you done if they're flooded again this year, which is a possibility. So natural flood management, just to remind everyone, it has so many co-benefits. It's a no-brainer. It's something you should invest in. It's relatively less expensive than hard engineering, you know, with concrete walls and things. It's it looks at transverse ploughing, contour ploughing, so that you reduce the runoff from fields. It looks at tree planting, particularly willows, which are hydroponic inhibitors. They actually suck up and store some of the water, and they inhibit that surface flow. Hedging as well, and ditches, as Colin suggested. Natural flood management uses natural processes to store water in the upper catchments and release it slowly. It not only releases it slowly, but it releases it over a long period of time. So natural flood management actually benefits us when we're in a drought condition, because it continues to release water. I think that James's intention of getting a multi-agency roundtable discussion on how we move forward and how we put in natural flood management techniques is a good one. And I regret that having been part of that process, we didn't invite all the county councillors in the forest as we should have done. And so hopefully that will take place fairly quickly, because speed is of the essence on this. The other thing I've learned is that the working with the flood engineer Lawrence King in Forest, they are working at maximum capacity, and they do need to be fully resourced. We do need to make sure that they are, because they are part of the team as well. They're the outliers looking at the issues. They're knowledgeable, they're experienced, they know what they're doing, and we do need to make sure that they are resourced to do what they need to do. We also, and this will come on later, we also need to apply pressure on the water and sewage companies, because not only with the flooding, the worst thing you can get is for septic tanks to blow and sewage systems to block up, and then of course discharge the sewage, which mixes with the flood water and causes a health hazard as well. So we do need to look at working with the water and sewage companies to urgently review their monitoring schemes and monitoring and combined sewer outlets as well. And we also need to look at how they reducing the pollution of water courses, but that's another issue which will come up later. So really what I'm trying to say is that we should as a county think strategically when the long term is becoming the short term, look to reduce the risk of flooding rather than trying to adapt to the flooding by clearing up and putting flood defences in after the event. We're going to get this more and more, and we really do need to think strategically and short term as well, because it's not going to go away, it's actually going to get worse. And the costs of clearing up and learning lessons is intense, whereas the cost of actually strategically putting in natural flood management techniques early is far less. Thank you.
Chris, thanks. I know we're all getting to know each other a little bit. I'm a bit of a stickler for having a clear audit trail in terms of comments versus observations versus recommendations. And there was quite a lot in there that I'm don't know whether James wants to come back on or whether we want to highlight at the end of this session in writing afterwards for next steps. Sophie, I wouldn't mind your steer on that.
All of Chris's comments will be in my minutes anyway, so they get shared with officers, and James will have a copy of that. So we can share it that way, or we can share a separate document if you would prefer.
That's really useful. Perhaps we can touch base after this session and think about how to best present it, because I want to capture this stuff in a way that is forward looking and talks about implementing some of those changes, and if they're not adopted, I'd like to know why. I think we were Roger next, and then Jill. I've seen a hand up there. So Roger, then Jill, then Phil.
Thank you, Chair Dom. Yeah, I'm really sort of following on from some of Chris's comments, quite interested in kind of what can be done sort of holistically and at the level of prevention, as much as sort of kind of clear up the mess afterwards, if I can put it that way. And I mean, we got off, as your figures show, fairly lightly in Cheltenham. There were a few areas, but I'll just use one area which I was not a county councillor at the time, but I was a borough councillor, as an example of the kind of thing that happens, and wondering, thinking, I think some, thinking is required, which doesn't just apply to the Sunnyfield Lane area, but applies to lots of areas. And what seems to happen when we have very, very heavy rainfall, as we did, in fact, we actually had the highest in Cheltenham, although we got off the lights this time, is the water all runs off Leckhampton Hill in this instance, down into the Sunnyfield Lane area at the extreme southwest of Cheltenham, where there are a lot of low-lying mobile homes either side of the it's a tributary of the Ham, I think, and on a bad day, and there was such a bad day in 2016 when I did get called out, and there have been since, but maybe not this time around. What happens is it all runs off at great speed. The water courses are unable to cope with it, and it ends up in two places. One is all over the mobile home sites, lapping at the doorways of the places, with consequent backing up of drains into toilets, which is the nasty bit about it. So although they didn't actually get flooded per se, they've had backing up and so on. And the other area of last resort is the highway drains, which could be better, and that might be something we need to get on to Vernon and again. But no way is the highway drains really going to be the solution to the problem, because we're talking about the whole of the water coming off Leckhampton Hill down into a major area of mobile home parks. And I was interested in what James was saying about the multi-agency approach, because in the 2016 situation, we did get the Environment Agency out after the event, and they did agree that they had not carried out their regular inspections at the level they should have done, and they did themselves clear quite a lot of the water courses, and that may have done quite a lot of good in the subsequent events. But also discovered more recently, which I didn't even know about, that there is a pumping station somewhere in the Badgeworth area that sometimes is more effective than other times because the equipment is very old. I don't know who's responsible for that. And I think the feeling on the ground is one of a little bit of helplessness, that we don't know who to contact, and we're not very confident that everybody's working together to solve the problem, even when we do contact you. So I think what you're saying today is enormously helpful about the need for a multi-agency approach for this, and a prevention approach to some of it. So that's just a bit of a story to give a bit of background to where I think some of the problem or some of the needs are.
Roger, thank you. Jill, over to you.
Thank you. I'd like to just make 2 points fairly briefly, if I may. There have been some emails from a certain Matt Marston, and I've attended some very interesting webinars that have been provided through the Seven Rivers Trust. One in which the last one was about natural flood management and river resilience on farms. This is mainly from a company called, or an association called Farm Ed, in other words, farm education, I guess. And it was really, really informative, and lots of ideas there for management, which is going to be needed in Newent. The whole of the town centre, not the whole of the town centre, but the town centre was badly flooded from Peacock's Brook, which doesn't come under the Environment Agency because it's too small. And so it's all about repairing ownership. So having said that, I'll move on to my other point. Multi-agency, I think James probably knows what I'm going to say. I've not seen you face to face yet before, James, but I've certainly talked to you. We in Newent, as I'm also a town councillor, and from that perspective, I called for the county council to set up a multi-agency forum, and this is a different sort of aspect, looking at it from the bottom up rather than top down or middle down, which involves residents and people who've been affected, local stakeholders. I got the idea because I was searching on the internet for what might be done, and I came across Lydney's flood forum, which seemed to involve residents and everybody from officers, members and residents. And I really do think it's important to have this sort of aspect as well, so that residents feel included, because in Newent certainly, and I'm sure everywhere else, everybody's got their own ideas about what's gone wrong and what should have happened and what might happen, but they don't have the bigger picture. It's all about what happened to them and how to prevent it. And prevention isn't necessarily going to happen. So there's a sort of there's a modal shift in thinking that needs to happen for some people, in that we've got to learn to live with a certain amount of this. And I think that's something that can be achieved if we do, it's perhaps not appropriate for every area, but certainly in a town like Newent, we need to have information from the experts directly to the people who are affected, not in the shape of documents and reports. What we need is face-to-face meetings so that people can ask questions and be given answers about their own particular very serious problems that affect the life that they're trying to live. And the recommendations which we've certainly got from Lawrence King where possible, and continuing about measures that each individual householder can take to prevent the flooding. So we're partway there, but James has been promising to set up a multi-agency flood forum, such as I've described, for Newent. I'm hoping that I always intended when I called for it, before I was a councillor at the county council level, that it would involve local residents as well as the members and the officers and any other agencies that are involved. So I'd like to know, James, I know that we've had I've sent a recent email about where we are with it. So I'm looking forward to having a date in the very near future for Newent. Thank you very much.
Would you like me to respond, Chair?
I would, but I'm really conscious that I would like to try to keep some of our conversations at the county-wide level rather than drilling into the weeds of local divisions. And we're all guilty of it, and I appreciate that we want to have a discussion about our divisions as well. But I would like to try and drag the conversation up to county-wise after that. But James, please do come back to Jill's specific request, because I know it's important to her.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Jill, I mean, as you say, we've had communication. My apologies it's taken so long to get this particular forum off the ground. But as we've said, I wanted to go to a forum with some solid idea of what might be done. And as I related to you via email the other day, we've got some firm plans. Say with regards to the level gauge, I had a meeting with the suppliers yesterday, and we're going out on site in a week or two to look at where it might go. If you could keep that to yourself, I have had a conversation with our mutual friend, Mr. Woodyat, over the past couple of days, and put him in a picture too. But on a county level, I think you're right. But I do believe that sometimes we need to look at a twin track approach for these multi-agency forums. Using Lydney as an example, the Flood Forum has been in operation for quite some time, a couple of years. And speaking candidly and frankly, it didn't actually achieve that much. And I think the real action, the flood study that we're part funding with the Environment Agency, came about as a kind of subgroup to that forum, which was just the agencies. It was just EA, us, Highways, I can't remember who else, but it was very focused, half an hour. This is what came out of the public forum, what we're actually going to do about it. And we sat around the table, and that was the genesis of this flood study that we're doing. So I completely agree, there is a need to engage and inform communities. But at the same time, I think there has to be a space for the agencies to operate on a purely agency basis outside of the community and political environment in order to inform that wider approach. So I'm not saying the wider approach isn't necessary, it's absolutely essential, but I do believe there has to be a facility for officers and agencies to communicate and interact outside of that open environment. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Were there any other hands up? Phil, did I see yours sneaking up? Over to you, Phil.
Is also up, Chair, so I know I'm not on video, but I'll slip in after Phil if he's speaking.
Yeah, righto, Alex. Thanks, Phil. Nothing here at your end?
Hello. Are you hearing me now?
Loud and clear, cloudy beer, Phil.
Yeah, I've got to say, the sound is terrible. A few people, I can barely make out what they're actually saying. So if I pick up on something that someone has already mentioned, my apologies. Obviously, we've heard a lot about natural flood management, and I'm as keen on that as anybody, but that is only one tool in the toolbox. We've got a great exemplar. Luckily, I was involved in the Strode Valleys project. I'm sure Strode District Council would love people to revisit that and see the good work that's been done up there. In fact, it was such a good job that sadly we lost the officer who then got, should we say, taken office and now leads on natural flood management for the EA. So it just shows how satisfactory or how well some of these schemes can work. I just wanted to flag up, and I certainly don't want to get really parochial. James, we know you've been working hard since Christmas and the floods. I just wanted to touch base with you around some of the schemes. You say you've got 20 odd schemes in, and how we prioritise those, given that some of the previously built out attenuation systems that were put in some years ago with county council funding, in fact, proved to fail. And I'm just looking at how we prioritise those things for people who thought they were protected, only for the attenuation that was built in to fail. That's a question.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, I mean, in terms of the first question, in terms of prioritisation, it is linked back to our parish prioritisation approach, which looks at a whole range of factors that I won't go into now. But also its feasibility. We keep 20 plates spinning. If there is action that we can take on one of them, we take it. If it means that one of the other areas that perhaps comes in higher on the objective prioritization, that doesn't mean that we can't take action. I think when the opportunity comes up to act on any of these schemes, we're duty bound to take that action straight away. So Basically, it's an objective system with also opportunity as well being factored in there. In terms of existing schemes failing, I know we don't want to get into specifics, but I'm not clear on which ones they may be, that existing attenuation that may have failed. Are we talking about GCC-led schemes or SUDs on development here?
Certainly the one where you were last Thursday, and I've got to thank you for turning up at night to a parish council meeting, for instance.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. Yeah. No. Good point. So, I mean, with regards to that one, this was a pumping station. Yeah, I did get a bit of a pasting, didn't I, Phil? That was quite entertaining. I have set up the site meeting, by the way. That's gone to the parish council now, so did that straight away. Their pumping station, the telemetry equipment failed. So the warning didn't get to the community and it didn't get to the borough council. So they've recently installed a new digital telemetry system in that overpump. So they won't have that problem again. I mean, that was why people were so badly affected in Turley, is because that part of the technology failed, but it's been corrected. Personally, I think the pump is of sufficient capacity to do the job it needs to do if it's working, but it wasn't working, and that's why it failed. So it's not so much an attenuation scheme in terms of holding water back. It's the pump. The real opportunity that we've got, which you rightly raised, and I really appreciated it at the meeting, is raising the banks of the fishing lake. So that can act as attenuation, because that was never designed as attenuation. But it has the potential to be that. So, yeah, thank you. And I will feed all of that back to the Turley group when we meet them next Friday, I think it is supposed to be going out. That's with Highways and Tewkesbury Borough Council.
Yeah, thanks for that, James. But you say it's not attenuation, but the problem is the system that was designed, even before you get to the pumping station, was designed around a catchment of 70 hectares when was there that it was 140 hectares. So you're trying to deal with something from a much wider catchment. And while I'm talking about catchments,
Phil, forgive me. In the interest of time, I really do want to take this out from division level up to county level. Will you forgive me? And I'm going to ask you and James to take this offline, because I think there are county-wide issues that I really want to bring out this session.
Well,
are there any other questions and hands? I've got a few questions, but I'm leaving them till last. Chris, I think you had a hand, and then Roger. But as I say, really keen to make these county-wide questions, Chris.
Thank you, Dom. Yeah, I don't know exactly where you're coming from. James, in his report, has put a list of recommendations or proposals in next steps. I think we as a committee should support those recommendations, particularly the one which reads pursue the innovation for business case project rollout, because obviously this. So my proposal would be to support James's next steps, and see how they go, and get a report back from James at the next meeting on progress. Thank you.
Roger, you were broken
no,
to
sorry,
me.
Interruption there, Chair. Point of order. I had my hand up for a while. I already raised that I'd come in after Phil, but then it went straight to Chris. So before it goes to Roger, I'm going to make my point. So my question primarily is about how far do the future steps or future planning for flood management and the like incorporate the plan for future development in the area. So just thinking of Bishop's Cleeve division specifically, at the 2007 flooding, a third of the houses here weren't even built at that point. So I'm just thinking of, in terms of future floods, we've of course got Golden Valley development being built. We've got all the major development going around near northwest Swindon Village, just to name a few developments around my area. So I just wondered, well, yes, this is taking lessons learned from the most recent flood, but of course there'll be significant housing development and other development coming forward in the future. And how is that? Because I completely agree with Chris's point of this is much more about we need to be making preventative planning measures rather than just reactionary ones. So I wondered what thought process has gone into that. Thanks.
Thought process with regards to the next steps.
Because of course these developments are going to be with us. They're going to be built over the next 20 years. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think this comes down to our role as statutory consultee on major developments. This is a big area of our work. I've got 2 people working almost full time on commenting on major planning. Our role is to scrutinise the flood risk assessments and drainage strategies associated with major developments and ensure that the surface water leaving the site post-development is the same as or less than it was before, so-called greenfield runoff rate. That's something that we're extremely hot on, and that's the way we, as a team and as a county, deal with major development and flood risk.
Thanks all. I'm not seeing any other questions. In that case, I'm going to abuse my position, just ask a couple, James, and I'll put them all together for you. I think building on Chris's point, I really would welcome an update on lessons identified and changes made. One observation I have in your report is you mix lessons identified with lessons learned. In my mind, methodologically, you've only identified a lesson if you said something needs to change. You haven't learnt the lesson until that change has been delivered. And I found in the report it was quite difficult to understand what changes have been made versus what changes need to be made. And I think before the flood season comes back, it would be useful to have a report on those changes that you wish to make. I would like to know more about the division of labour between the different levels of government and whether or not you are getting to the stage where that can be standardized across the whole country. It feels like a county, it feels like it's a bit of a mosaic, and I'm just wondering at what stage we feel we can standardize that to make it easier for everybody. A particular worry bead for me is this staff shortage at the district level. I think you said that the Cotswold District Council and the Forest of Dean share the same officer. It may be anecdotal for me, but we were really short of district council officers, and I think for me, I'd really like to understand what's standing in the way of upgunning the staffing at that side. And then finally, on preparation and planning, I'd like to know a bit more about whether or not there are road shows or standardised plans that we can be helping local parish councils, town councils, and others build and design in advance of flood season. My day job is around strategy and planning, and it won't surprise you to say that my biases are I would like to help authorities develop plans, and I've been interested in what capabilities and programs we have to help local teams. That's it from me. Sorry, there's 3 or 4 in there, but really keen to get some sense of your thoughts on that. Over.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd certainly welcome that. With regards to the district level resourcing, I mean, I can't shore that up in any way. What I will say that we have been able to do with Tewkesbury Borough, their flood risk engineer has been off on extended sick leave for quite some time, and he's one of the most knowledgeable and experienced engineers in the area. That I would very much like to have some reassurance that role will continue. In the interim, in order to help our district colleagues, we have been providing a bit of support. So we have been carrying out their consenting and enforcing activity, which we delegate to them. And we've also been picking up their minor planning applications, which is only one small part of the district officer role. You know, it's a bit of what they have to do, but what we're really missing now is the on the ground knowledge, interaction, advocacy. So, you know, it's not something that I can directly comment on, but as being said, we work as an extended team. We support them wherever possible. With regards to Forest of Dean, they're down an engineer now, which has been a severe blow to Lawrence, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to provide a little bit of temporary support there as well whilst recruitment's underway. So we do support each other, but yeah, I completely agree with your sentiments about the importance of expanding those teams back to previous levels. With regards to strategy development, yes, please. Your support would be most welcome. I think, as well as local plans, we're currently in the process of investigating revision of our local flood risk management strategy, which is the statutory document that oversees our role as lead local flood authority. It's not out of date yet, but things have changed. You know, our thinking about flood risk management and extreme weather events has changed over the past few years, and I think the strategy needs to evolve to reflect that. Alongside the local flood risk management strategy, we're hopefully going to be reviewing our strategic flood risk assessment, which is basically the resource that developers will refer back to in order to help develop their flood risk assessments and drainage strategies. So that's on a county level, and that's going to be happening. We're going to be kicking that off this financial year, but it will probably be an 18-month, possibly 2-year project. So I'm more than happy to update you on that at future meetings.
James, thank you. I am not seeing any hands or waving, although I missed Alex's earlier. Hello, Alan, over to you.
Chairman, I just want to come back to what James said about Lydney. What Lydney actually did was it didn't achieve a lot in itself, but it did get the message out into the wider where it needed to get. And that probably would be my advice to Councillor Mosley. If Newark Town Council would like to interact with Lydney and perhaps benchmark, you'll see all the efforts we actually put in over the last 5 or 6 years to get to the stage we are now. So at least people are taking notice now. Town Council can't obviously do a lot on its own, but with James's team over the years, we have at least we've got ourselves being listened to. Thank you.
So thank you, Councillor Priest. I will just say it wasn't my intention in any way to denigrate the work that's been done up to this point. It was just purely to say that things work on parallel levels. You know, we would not have got where we're at Lydney without the flood group support. It just works on slightly different levels. So, you know, apologies if there was any indication that I downplayed the importance of what you've been doing.
No apologies necessary, James. I probably got misinterpreted. I know the work you're doing, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more for any more? Otherwise, we shall let James crack on. I think, Sophie, I think you and I will have a chat offline about how we receive an update in advance of the flood season coming. I'll look for your advice on that. And Chris, if you have any thoughts on that, do let me know. I think the key thing is just keeping a watching brief on this. Chris, we've got to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to support what you said, we do need a report back on, to be honest, on actions rather than you know. I know that we need a flood strategy, but my dad always told me that don't judge people by what they say, judge them by what they do. And we as a county need to be, you know, putting the next steps into action. So yeah, if we could have a report, yeah, but time is short. You know, this summer will go, and then we'll have the first floods, and you know we'll be accused of sitting on our hands, and I don't want to be in that position. Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, I share your worry bead on that, and I think, Sophie, let's have a conversation about how we can factor in an update, forward-looking update, September, October, with minimal impact on our work plan, and bending ourselves out of shape. James, thank you for your time. If there is nothing else on that, we will crack on into item 4, which is 106s and SIL. Ben, over to you, he says, looking to see if you are... Oh, there you are, Ben. Hi, good morning. I'm not sure how much notice you get, but it'd be useful sort of 5-10 minute introduction, your sense on it and talk us through your inputs in the reports and whatever, and then we'll open it up just like we did with James. Over to you, Ben.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually deputising for my line manager today, so please bear with me. I'm quite new to the team that is dealing with this subject, so I will run through the report and happily take any questions. But if they are quite detailed questions, I might need to defer and come back to the committee if that's okay. So if I just start with quickly providing an outline about the different developer contribution systems that operate within Gloucestershire, and I just want to highlight an emerging issue which is negatively impacting education services. And then, of course, I'll be happy to take any questions. So Gloucestershire County Council is responsible for delivering specific infrastructure and services and ensuring that new development does not adversely impact against those services. Many planning permissions are therefore subject to developer contributions in the form of planning obligations to mitigate the impacts of the new development. These can be via planning agreements, which are entered under Section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act, known as Section 106 agreements. These are often considered alongside highways contributions, often through Section 278 agreements and the Community Infrastructure Levy, or CIL. CIL is applied on a formulaic basis to generate a pot of money which is spent on infrastructure across a CIL charging area, i.e. a local planning authority. This is in contrast to Section 106 agreements, which are site-specific. While CIL can run alongside Section 106, there should be no situation where a development is paying twice for the same infrastructure. In two-tier local government, district councils are the local planning authorities for the vast majority of planning applications, including residential and employment. The county council is the local planning authority for some planning applications relating to minerals and waste, as well as county council developments such as schools, libraries, and some new roads. This means that the district councils are the LPAs for the majority of planning applications. The county council, however, is a statutory consultee and will submit consultation responses as part of the planning process. These could relate to various county council roles or responsibilities and may also include requests for developer contributions. It is for the LPA to take this information into account when determining planning applications. There is no requirement for the LPAs to agree with the county council's consultation response. The situation we currently find ourselves in is a particular concern with regards to our role as an education authority. To date, no CIL monies have been allocated from any of the district councils for education. This situation has worsened by the fact that there have been many recent examples where both developers and the LPAs have either significantly reduced or completely declined GCC's request for developer contributions via Section 106. This is particularly an issue towards education and libraries. In conclusion, the introduction of CIL across much of the county has reduced the county council's ability to secure developer contributions due to the two developer contribution systems being in place. This is despite clear rules governing the use and applications of both systems. This dual approach is often cited by developers as double dipping, with contribution values challenged and development viability used to reduce or remove any financial contributions requested by county council services. This has resulted in the county council failing to secure millions of pounds worth of requested Section 106 contributions. It should be noted that the JCS authorities are in the process of reviewing their CIL, which is anticipated to be completed in summer 22. This is welcomed on the assumption that it will result in the removal of education and library contributions from their JCS CIL regime. Finally, I just wanted to briefly update you on the outcomes of a recent planning inquiry at Coombe Hill in Tewkesbury Borough. Within this public inquiry, the County Council's methodology for calculating education contributions was criticised within the inspector's report. In response to this, officers immediately started a review of the existing process. An interim GCC education position statement was published, which outlines a revised approach, and officers are in the process of reviewing recent planning applications to apply this updated methodology. A more detailed review of the data used within the process will commence shortly, and this is expected to conclude again in 22. All district councils will be kept informed during the review process. Chair, that's as far as I wanted to go in terms of running through the report, but I'm very, very happy to take any questions that the committee may have.
Ben, thank you very much and very comprehensive. I'll open it to the floor.
Yeah.
I was just opening it to the floor for questions. I know this was a hot topic from colleagues last time. Chris, I think you gesticulated first, and over to you.
Thank you, Dom. I am aware that a new infrastructure levy is being brought in to hopefully resolve some of the issues that have taken place with the current SIL Section 106 conflict, let's call it. I'm asking Ben whether you know why officers think that SIL monies have not been forthcoming for education. So in my LPA, developer contributions have taken place for education. You know, in all developments where that was seen as necessary to mitigate the harm. But yeah, why do you think those contributions have not been forthcoming, please?
There's a couple of reasons, I believe. I think the first one is the level of money raised through SIL perhaps is not as much as we originally thought. We've got to remember that it's not a county council function, it's a document for today's scrutiny committee. I had a look through the previous year's statements, and as far as I can see through there, the level of funding received through SIL hasn't generated the same amount that they anticipated. So there may be issues about the releasing of that funding. So i.e. it hasn't got to the certain parts of the development. The other issue regarding why there might be issues with education and would you mind just reminding me which district do you represent, or is it the Forest, or?
I happen to be in the Forest, but we're talking county-wide, basically.
Yeah, so the Forest is the only one of the districts that doesn't actually have a SIL regime in place. So they do fall on more traditional Section 106 agreements, and that tends to be fine. And you're right, and we do get money for education where it can be justified.
Which are working well, as far as as far as I'm aware.
I think there are issues elsewhere, is where the local planning authority can't justify a 5-year housing supply. I think that puts extra pressure on for applications coming through because issues of viability do come forward. And I think, unfortunately, it is rather expensive to develop within Gloucestershire. I mean, the level of infrastructure funding that we require is quite high, and I think we just hear viability mentioned all the time. I think one of the other problems is just the way we operate within a 2-tier system. The county doesn't actually have a voice or a role within that decision-making process. So, of course, we could make our case, and our case is robustly defended in terms of evidence about justifying why that level of expenditure is required. But of course, it is therefore up to the committee to take on other considerations, and social housing, affordable housing, of course, is another key consideration. We're looking at a development, and I would assume then the committee just needs to weigh up what they think they can get through a particular application. So I think, unfortunately, it might just be when looking at the pecking order as far as the LPA is concerned, perhaps education and libraries is not quite as high as other financial commitments.
We'll go to Jill and then to Alan. Jill.
Can I defer to Alan first, because I think he may have something to say about Forest and SIL, and so have I, but I'd rather let him go first, if that's okay.
You can do, Jill. Alan, over to you. Very kind, Jill.
Thank you, Jill. I hope it's not a trap, Jill. Thank you, Chairman. 5.4, the situation has been worsened by the fact that there have been many recent examples where developers in the LPAs have either significantly reduced or completely declined the County Council's requests. I think that's looks to me a bit unprofessional. But also, is it a case that we are literally selling the infrastructure of Gloucestershire down the road just to deliver houses at all costs? That concerns me. Chris, in the Forest, Section 106s, yeah, they're in place, but some of the amounts we're asking for are derisory, and they have been greatly reduced when developers moan. So I don't think we get the fair amount of Section 106. Am I being a bit naive on 4.3, where it says, again, with the exception of these percentage payments, which is 5% as an administrative cost to the LPA and 25% to the towns and parish who have neighbourhood development plans, no other contributions have been paid. So what's actually happened to the remaining 70%? Where's that actually gone? Then, as a criticism perhaps of this authority, are we completely up to speed of where we should have been on SIL and giving those districts the right advice. I've heard some good officers, particularly highway officers over the years, some who've now left, who completely understood SIL, but we just don't seem to be putting the pressure on. I mean, in my view, there's not a lot more important than education. So I think it just needs a complete relook at. Thank you, Chairman.
Alan, thank you. Jill, I don't know whether Alan read your mind, but over to you, Jill.
Not exactly, but let's go one thing at a time. Yesterday at the planning meeting, Newent lost out on £106,000 because of the recalculation that's going on, referred to in 5.4. But that's just a minor thing, really, in the bigger picture. The Forest of Dean isn't using SIL, and I know that Alan has requested reasons for it in the past, and I'm not entirely sure, although I've been told by our planning officers that they think that the reason is that developers are less likely to come to the forest, which isn't the most profitable place to develop, if we had SIL in place, and that's one of the reasons that we've kept Section 106. But that's my understanding, and I'd be happy to have somebody either confirm or deny it. One of the reasons I want to ask about education is an in principle thing, and I'm not entirely au fait with all the statutory detail behind it. But should we not be relying on the council tax element, which is increased when houses are developed, in order to fund education? Or are we totally reliant on SIL, or the absence of SIL contributions that were 106 contributions? And I know normally in the Forest of Dean, there's a hefty amount that seems to go from the developers to education on each planning application over 10 houses. So that's the two questions, really. The reasons why Forest of Dean won't at the moment transfer to SIL, and the business of the principle of where we raise money for increasing education provision, either SIL or through the council tax. Thank you.
Chair, would you like me to respond? Yeah. On the first point regarding Forest of Dean and the adoption of SIL, I'm afraid I can't comment on that. As you say, that is a district policy, and a district, they need to think about what the pros and cons are of it. From an officer perspective, I think it is simpler to have one system in place, and as the members already suggested, the new infrastructure levy could actually really solve this issue and probably make it a little bit more simpler, but we are a little bit of a time away from that. With regards to education and how we can fund new places, of course, we do receive money from government for education places. However, there is a balance, and I'm still learning the system. There does seem to be a balance between the amount of money the government provides for new places, which are expected through normal kind of growth in population, as opposed to demand for education places resulting from new development, i.e. an increase from what was originally planned. And I think the idea is that the developer contributions make that gap, so i.e. fill in the things which are directly linked to their new development. The problem is, because of the amounts of money that we're talking about, those values are always challenged. And I think it then goes back to just going back to site viability and what is deemed appropriate for that from the by the planning committee when determining planning permission. The county council were very clear about what they require in terms of education, and there is a robust process about that. Admittedly, it has been recently challenged through Coombe Hill, so that the methodology has just been reviewed in that, and they're reviewing the data that underpins that assessment, but it is quite robust. I can't comment on the council tax basis, I'm afraid. Again, I think that's perhaps for others to comment on, but I hope that addresses your questions.
Colin, I sense you wanted to come in on that specific one, and then we'll go to other questions.
So it's just I can add. I mean, as Ben said, it's relatively new for him. Where I've gone through the pain of this over a number of years, different authorities. So if I just supplement what Ben said, bear in mind that the council tax pays for the ongoing revenue cost of education. That does not help us we wouldn't ask for school places to be provided by a developer if there were adequate school places in that area. But if there isn't, you've got the capital costs of the school to be provided before you even get to the revenue costs of the ongoing education of the children, which comes from council tax. So yes, the government do help us, as Ben has alluded to, but even the government acknowledge that what they give us is inadequate, which is why there is a Department for Education formulae, which is a nationally recognised formula put forward by DfE, which is the contribution that developers should give towards places at different levels for senior, for junior, for reception, for nursery, that is applied to a development. Now, some of this confusion is caused. What SIL does is, that formula and use of it has been outside of SIL. By coming along and bringing SIL in, it's actually caused some confusion. As Ben has said, some developers regard that as double dipping because they think they're getting hit twice. When in actual fact, what they end up putting in for SIL is a lot less than they used to put in when we was allowed for a free negotiation on the particular issues that directly affect and impact the council, like libraries, like education, like transport. And if we don't get those resources coming through, then what it does is leaves a long-term strain on the county's budget, because otherwise it doesn't go away. The problem doesn't go away. It still exists. The developer's taken his super profit, put it in his pocket and walked away. And then we are left trying to pick up the bill afterwards as a county to put the necessary infrastructure in, to put, what may be education in, to put libraries in, or whatever the community needs to be supported, having moved into those new houses. And that's the reason that Section 106 exists, because it was there to mitigate exactly what it said, to mitigate the impact of development. And that's exactly what it's designed to do up front, not further down, not part of a revenue budget, but up front. And that's where the two end up in conflict. And the SIL has caused some confusion in that. And the reason, not only generally has SIL produced less money than Section 106 anyway, but because the way it's framed, because it was done as almost like an inducement to encourage people to support development, if you've got a local neighbourhood plan, immediately 25% of anything comes in through SIL goes to neighbourhood plan. The local authority are then also allowed to then take 5% out for administration costs. So you're down to literally 70% or less going to the strategic needs, to meet the strategic needs on a budget that's already less than you started with. So that's where the issue really does impact. Sorry, Ben, I just wanted to give some clarity to that. And can I just say, from my experience, all the authorities I've worked in, where I've been in a director position, none of them, they were all unitaries, but none of them implemented SIL because we all thought it was a negative. Once we sat down and analysed it, we decided to stay with Section 106 because we felt we could argue better and secure more for the council and the community's benefit using SIL, using Section 106, where you could do a viability assessment of each site, know what the super uplift was for the developer, particularly if they've got a greenfield site they're developing, and you could then hone and reflect the amount to mitigate the impact directly to that development, and also had a really good argument because if it went to inquiry, you had a independent assessment carried out of the viability of that site, so there's no way for them to go or hide.
Colin, thank you. I'm seeing Roger's hand, not any others. Roger, over to you.
Thank you, Dom. Yeah, I mean, this is a really difficult one, and I'm conscious that this is a meeting held in public. There's probably not enormous numbers of the public listening into this meeting, but what larger numbers of the public will be looking at, those who are interested in this sort of problem, is the report that gets put in the media, Gloucestershire Live, and all the rest of it. And this is an area of real frustration when councils are in, if you like, competition with each other over funding or over who does what and so forth. And so, and I think frustration is probably a stronger word as you can use in this context. But so it really does need to be resolved. And I suppose I've got two questions. I'm thinking about some of the things that Ben was saying that he couldn't comment on, but somebody does need to comment on. Maybe somebody different needs to comment. Because this is an issue that does need resolution. So I think I would have two questions here. One is having identified the problem, which I think Ben and Colin Chick and others have done admirably well. I think my question is, what do the districts say about it? Because I would reasonably expect, if a school is being built, and we've got one being built right now on the southeast of Cheltenham, it's because of increases in the population, and it's because of housing that gets then built as a result. So you would reasonably expect there to be Section 106 or something equivalent contributions towards that school, whether it comes out of SIL or wherever, but it needs to come from somewhere because the money doesn't grow on trees. That would be my first question. What do the districts say about this? And if we have to return this to scrutiny, should we actually bring them into the conversation in scrutiny? And the second question is a more technical question, is in the case of a school, the planning authority is obviously the county council. So do the new rules on SIL and S106 and the fact that we'll say Forest is doing 106 and Cheltenham is doing SIL, does that preclude the county council from asking for the necessary what we would have done in the past S106 contributions towards the school or the library or whatever it happens to be? So those would be my questions. Thank you, Chair.
If I could just respond. If I could just respond to the second question, just regarding the different financial contribution systems and does it impact on whether or not we can ask. During the planning process, the county council is consulted on the different planning applications. Where they're qualifying, that then goes to the different teams within the authority. So, for example, the education team will then make that assessment, and then we, as an authority, will then provide that consultation response back to the LPA. We don't make any distinction between whether or not that should be Section 106 or SIL. It is a response to the LPA, and they would then determine, as I understand it, they would then determine the way that would be funded.
Yes, but if the LPA is the county council, as it would be in a school, but my question is, does that change the rules or not?
If I'm being completely honest with you, I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm not sure if Colin could come in here and ask that, or if that's something I could provide a response after and come back to the committee with a future answer on that one.
I'm actually going through this one in my mind at the moment. I think we are still governed by, we can still go for Section 106, but we're still governed by the SIL regulations within that district. But I need to check that one out. It's quite a good question, actually.
If you're going to take that one away, I think Phil had his hand up, then we'll go to Jill. Phil and Jill.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to respond, actually. I mean, Roger mentioned that somebody should comment on this. I have a wider view on it. Actually, I'm very much in favour of simplifying the issue, not getting too bogged down in the detail, because I actually see this as something that we cannot very easily resolve ourselves. In fact, we feel quite helpless, and actually what we need is MHCLG to step in and show a lead on this. I realise that the new infrastructure levy is being talked about, but that is some way away. truth is, we're probably not alone. We just happen to be one of the first councils to be affected in this way, and other councils will surely end up in this mess. Actually, two-tier local government has resulted in SIL failing abysmally across the county. We used to receive over 70% of developer contributions through Section 106 monies, and that's under SIL, it's up to 30%. That just goes direct to the LPAs now. So this is a very serious problem, which I believe we cannot solve ourselves. And I know that we are looking into involving MHCLG very soon. We're just trying to get the argument across, really. We're trying to find a way of presenting it where it hits home. But I'm all in favour of simplifying issues. I appreciate all the discussion that's gone on this morning about the nitty-gritty of it. But actually, this can only really be solved by going higher. So that's my view.
Thank you for that. You've made me feel better about it, because that was what I was stuck on, the sort of complexity, but also the simplicity of there seems to be a real problem here, and life is about trying to figure out what levers you have to pull, and really useful for that signposting of a conversation that's going to happen. And I think that's perhaps part of how I'll sum up this at the end. Jill, you're waiting patiently.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to Colin for explaining and highlighting something I should have realised about the difference between the capital and the revenue accounts. And I think that's put a completely different aspect on my view of 106 and SIL within the Forest of Dean, and I'd like to pursue it a bit further within our own authority. My other question is one of a much more detailed one. Hopefully it can be answered quickly, and it's about the library contributions that we make as a planning authority to the library system through the 106 contributions, which are a regular feature of all developments over a certain size. I would like to know whereabouts the contributions, which are presumably capital contributions, but appear to be used in the way that I would have considered revenue, i.e. buying books and providing things that are not actually assets that will last forever, or at least a long time, and how we can track them. Because I don't have any, in Newent Library, we have a lot of contributions from various local developments that are going on, but I don't see any, it's not that I don't see any improvements in the library, but I don't see any tracking of where those amounts go, which are quite significant, certainly in many thousands. So I'm just wondering what feedback members could have as district members as to where that money goes, and county council members too. Thank you.
Colin, shall I jump in first? I think you might be able to help me on this one a little bit. Just if I can just refer to the annual infrastructure statements that we now need to publish. So it's a requirement for all local authorities in receipt of SIL and Section 106 to publish annual statements, and within that should provide the information that you require, i.e. that link between contributions coming in and where it's being used. However, they are published a year in arrears, so I appreciate that's probably not as quick as you were asking for. I would need to seek guidance from colleagues within libraries to provide a more detailed response. So I'm not sure if, Colin, are you able to provide any more clarity on the issues raised?
Well, it goes into a library pool and the money's used. But sometimes, I mean, if you think about it, it's not just about the buildings themselves. When you get an increase in population, we provide things like computers. Yes, it's books. We would need to suddenly expand. Now, the revenue stream for books is only really to replace those that get worn out and bring in some latest text, etc. When you suddenly get a large population increase, you actually have to increase your stock to begin with. So there's a capital cost there. So to buy books is a justifiable expense. And and as is the computers and other stuff that's needed to support local population. Anything that's needed to do, additional desks, additional facilities expansion of the library and that sort of thing, and adjustments to the library, they're all justifiable capital costs that we charge back against that section 106 to support the library. Where, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I mean, last year, as Ben knows, near the end of the year, I diverted a little bit of money from a couple of other budgets deliberately to increase our library stock. And not so much the library stock, but actually replace some of the aging books and things like that, and bring forward some of our IT initiatives deliberately to try and strengthen our offer from the library. So that sort of thing is needed all the time. Yes, there is the ongoing revenue cost of wear and tear, but there is also the increase of stock and all the other aspects that go with that.
Thanks, Colin. Roger, I think I saw a hand. I'm not seeing any others, so do. Sorry, Phil, you were actually first. Phil, go on, Phil.
Thanks, Chair. Having been guillotined earlier, I'll keep this a little short. Sadly, being the nerd that I am, I was sat at the inquiry that triggered some of this in relation to Coombe Hill, and I know what some of the aftermath is going to be in relation to some of the schools in my division. The question, and I am going to keep it short, because Phil Robinson's spoken, 6.4, how can we take a confidence then going forward that we're not going to be left, and I am suspecting millions and millions of pounds worth of funding gap in provision for education with all the development that's coming into the area. Is there a confidence with officers? How do we extricate ourselves from what is a very dire situation created by the district?
With regards to the fallout from Coombe Hill and how we're responding to that, so colleagues in education have taken the inspector's report and worked through the detail of that, and have recognised the key points made by through the inquiry, and have worked out a way of deducting a certain amounts from the contributions that they're currently seeking. That interim position will hold until we can undertake a comprehensive review of the data that feeds into that process. At the moment, the sites that are being used to calculate the PPRs, the product pupil ratio or pupil product ratio, I'm not quite sure what it stands for, but effectively the amount of money per 100,000 people. It was quite a small sample size that was looked at. Now, when the evidence was first gathered for that, colleagues within education discussed what they wanted to do, discussed the process, and they've got a buy-in from various developers about it being the correct way of collecting this data. Unsurprisingly, when the outcomes of that assessment came through and it actually said that the PPR rate should increase, the developers started saying, hang on a minute, we don't support the outcomes of this study. However, because it was agreed at the time, that's the way that the County Council moved forward, and they updated their PPRs in 2019. They've now been challenged, so what we've decided to do is actually going to operate a twin track. As I said, we've got this interim position, which will deal with the issues immediately and reduce the PPRs in line with the inspector's report. And then we're looking to commission a comprehensive survey, and we're still working through the details of what's actually going to be involved in that. Unfortunately, that will take a little bit of time, so we are going to be exposed for several months until we can get this new evidence base. But what we want to do is we will be seeking advice, obviously, from industry experts to make sure that the revised data set is robust, and we'll be discussing that with districts, because it's really key to this is that they fully understand and buy into what we're doing, so we're not at loggerheads constantly about why a county are asking for these education contributions, and colleagues in their districts are saying, well, that doesn't make sense, that's not viable for the development. We are also looking as ever to expand our team and trying to help to actually just kind of build those relationships with the LPAs and developers, just to make it very clear about and justifying why we need these contributions. But I'm afraid it will take a bit of time to go through that process. As I say, it's going to be 2022 before we can get that revised data set in place.
Colin.
Thanks, Chair. Just to add to what Ben has just said, in addition to that, we're aware that there's probably, I can't remember who it was who said it, one of the councillors said it, that I think it might be Phil Robinson actually, that there's probably other authorities in a similar position. We just happen to be at the front edge at the moment. And it's actually, was it Phil Orford? Maybe I can't. Sorry, whoever it was. It was a well made comment, and we're conscious of that. And so we've approached the CCN network, the County Council network, to find out what other authorities' position is, so that, or I should say that, what we're aiming to do would be then working through the CCN to use that combined pressure of other counties with us that are in a similar situation to make the case to government. That's the first thing we're doing. Also, the other thing we're doing in parallel is, and we have been doing this from an E&I perspective, rather than just the education perspective, from a planning perspective, is through, for example, JCS authorities, where the three authorities that make up the joint joint core strategy. So I can get the second word out. Joint core strategy. Yeah. I say it every day of the week, and I can't go to present, and I forget what the word is. The joint core strategy. What we've been trying to do, and you would not believe this, for 18 months now, is when we realised there was a conflict in the SIL regulations, or the SIL, what they had included within their local plan. We immediately took a case, and we won that case. And on the basis of that, setting that precedent of winning that case, we went back to the districts and said, look, this is silly. We're in conflict here. We need to sit down and work out a way forward. And we offered to do a study with them, a joint study, to then look at what was needed for the future. I think it's an underestimate. We said we'd pay for half of that cost, and they had to chip in about 5,000 each. We'd pay the other half ourselves, because it wasn't doing any of us any good. I'll be honest, all we got was stonewalled for 6 months, Ben, or more, probably more than that. It was probably the best part of a year. And in the finish, I actually said, okay, then we had been offered membership for to join the JCS as a partner, because up to then we're not involved, we're not a local planning authority, and which would help them, because we was prepared to put £60,000 in the pot. And what I eventually said to them this year was, okay, look, if you're not prepared, I mean, first of all, they were supposedly working on it, and then told us later they hadn't been working on it at all on the joint submission. And then eventually I said, look, we'll pay for the whole lot. We'll put £60,000. We'll put this additional money in, but we won't join, because there's no point in us being in conflict and being part of it around the table with you. So sit around the table with you. So, you know, until we sort this out, we won't join, but we'll use £60,000 we were going to chip in to pay for the study. So we're now finally, literally in the last couple of months, got a brief together with them. And is it out yet, Ben, or is it about to go out? Don't tell me it's still stuck in the...
It's out. We're actually reviewing the tenders this afternoon. So
right, I thought it had been. So we have got another route that we're taking, but it's been very, very long-winded to get to that point, and that's probably taken us well over a year. I don't think I'd be exaggerating if I said 18 months to get to that point.
Thank you. I think, sorry, my screen's moving around. Roger, you had a question. That's the last one, I think, and then I'll try and sum up and we'll close this item. Roger.
Yeah, I think the question is partly answered by Colin, but I'll still tell you what it is, because I agree with Phil Robinson that we are probably going to end up with the MHCLG on trying to resolve an issue which probably didn't get thought about as thoroughly as it ought to be when they framed the new set of regulations. But obviously, I mean, that takes a lot of time, and nobody likes seeing stuff kicked in the long grass because it's in central government. Least of all, you know, anybody involved in the development. So my original question is, what do the districts say about this? And I think Colin has given a very helpful and comprehensive answer on some of the moves that we've made from this end to try to unblock that process. And I would just advocate that conversation of George all carries on not only at officer level, but but also perhaps at member level, maybe the council leader needs to be talking to council leaders in the districts. Because ultimately, people have got to sit down and agree. I mean, you can do all the stuff involving the MHCLG that you want to, and you can have all the studies that you want to. But I kind of think this needs a bit of goodwill, and that's probably best generated by people sitting down in a room. That would be my contribution to it.
Yeah, Roger, thank you. I think to try and sum up this session, I suppose I'm quite worried by what I'm hearing and the magnitude and the scale of it, and the fact it's systemic, and in particular, anything that affects education, school places, I suppose, just really does make my worry beads go. I'm also slightly confused as to, and unclear as to, the route to market for improving this process and the timelines involved. And I was particularly taken by Roger's point there about at what point would members and political people need to start a conversation. Sophie or others, I'll take views on how we might want to reflect that from this, but I would like to do what we can to better understand that process and to help escalate it if we can, if that's the role of the committee. But I'm slightly unclear on whether we can and whether we should, I suppose. Sophie, do you have any thoughts?
I suppose it's down to understanding how much GCC can do. I understand that it's probably mostly out of hands until everyone can agree, but in terms of a scrutiny committee, you could make a recommendation to the cabinet members to take this on, but I'm presuming that cabinet member has already taken it on, is already and doing that for you. So you can do that. It's entirely up to you, really, if you want to put that forward as an endorsement from the committee to start those conversations.
Yeah, I think my instincts are to do that, unless Chris or any other members are violently against it. I think a note saying, our sense is that this does need escalating in terms of magnitude, importance, and clarity. We are grateful for any cabinet members taking this on so far, and would like to help them in any way we can to move this forward faster, I suppose. I'm sure you'll help me with some wording. Getting thumbs up from Chris. Any comments around the houses on that in terms of anything I've missed? Phil?
Not they'd want to do it, but they'd be very interested to know just what the districts are sat on. Money-wise, I mean.
Yeah, it had occurred to me, Phil, because I should think it's stacking up. If there's nothing else, no afterburners, I shall say huge thanks to Ben and the team. Ben, I appreciate you were subbing in, so really grateful for your comprehensiveness, and thank you also to Colin for diving in as and when we bottomed you out, but very grateful for today. Thank you very much. I hope you found it useful, and we're delighted to support you in any way we can in terms of escalating this and trying to sort things out and improving it. So thank you on behalf of the committee for bringing this. I think you had a month's notice, so really great to see things turned around so quickly. Thank you. Colin, without wanting to put pressure on you and holding to it, how long is your report likely to be? I'm just wondering whether we give people 5-10 minutes for a cuppa and East Springs breaks before or after your slot. I don't mind either way.
Chair, by all means, I think quite welcome. It'll probably take me 10 minutes. It's normally the questions that take longer than my presentation, but and it's probably more logical to allow the presentation to run into the questions rather than break it. So if you want to take a break now, I've got no problems with that whatsoever.
Yeah, should we do that? Should we come back at 12 o'clock? I'm very conscious we've all got lives and eyesight that we need to stop staring at screens for a little bit of time and stretch our legs. Let's do that, team. We'll see you back at midday. I think in the spirit of cracking on, we'll go for it, Colin.
Okay.
Everyone else's time, over to you.
No problem at all. Right, I'm only going to highlight. I'm going to take the report is basically read. I'm going to highlight any what I believe are key issues to draw your attention. and or anything that may have changed since the report was written, obviously because there's a bit of a lead time, and pick those up as we go through, and I'll take questions at the end. As I've said previously and agreed with the chair, both today and future meetings, I will, wherever possible, will attend, and I will cover this report and any other issues that come up, rather than have the whole team at here. But obviously, like today with Ben and James, I'll have the people here to answer specific reports, but the rest of the time I will deal with these issues, and if I can't answer them, I'll take them back, which has generally worked well in the past. So anyway, without further ado, right, highways contract, it's now just starting its third year. It's running fairly well. We have now got all of our inspections and targets are being hit at the moment. What is working very well is we're using it as a way of supporting a highways skills academy, and we've now got something like about 16 to 18 staff going through training because there's a national shortage of people in this area. So we're using that collaborative working with the contractor and with the consultants working on the contract to develop our own academy and bring people through at different levels within the organisation. On highways delivery, I think probably the one that has been very noticeable and will be noticeable again, because we're out of the tree planting season, but we're actually in the tree cutting back season when it comes to ash dieback. But what has been received well is our 2-for-1 offer. Basically, for every ash tree we cut back, we put 2 new trees in. But it's the right tree in the right place, or the right size of tree in the right place as well. What we're not doing is just replacing, like a lot of the trees were self-set, and they're probably inappropriate being too big and too close to the highway. So we're going for a phased approach where we take trees out. So it will be hedging and smaller shrubs near the edge of the carriageway, and the bigger trees further back, so they don't have to keep being pruned, which doesn't the tree any good, but equally we remove the risk of boughs, etc., and heavy winds breaking and dropping onto the road and killing people. So it's about appropriate tree in the right place going forward. On major projects, Junction 10, we had the preferred route announcement on the 16th of June. That really starts the process going properly, because that immediately means then that people know that their houses could or could not be affected by the scheme. And we're currently in the process of contacting people and working with our land agents to start to address those issues for people. For the next major scheme of note at the moment that's significant is Gloucestershire Southwest Bypass, otherwise known as Clancy Road. This has been slowed down by COVID because of the cancellation of the public inquiry, but that was finally held virtually last November. We received a positive decision in April. There was obviously then the 6-week standstill judicial review period. We're now through that, so we're now moving forward. We've got a bid into the Levelling Up Fund for additional funding to make up the shortfall to enable the scheme to move forward. And our aim is to be on site by the end of this year with demolition, if not before. West Cheltenham Cyber, the £22 million scheme, phases 1 and 2 that started last year. For those of you who weren't here at the time, it was amazing. Whenever all the other contracts in the country were stopping, we actually got this one on site in June last year to program, and even managed to get the contract altered to put all of the liability costs onto the contractor. So the contractor went ahead, we protected the council, but at the same time they went ahead, and that will be phase 1 and 2 will be finished this summer. We managed to get phases 3 and 4 and the walking and cycling element of the scheme on site in January this year, and our aim is to have that completed by spring of next year. So that is all on target and working well. Sorry, I'll cover that. The Emergency Active Travel Fund is being used at the moment to develop the cycle route, and our focus at the moment is to complete the spine through the county, so we can then start building the other sections into areas from that. So the first section that we're working on, we already put the first section in during Emergency Active Travel Fund, was the London Road section. The next part will be from the end of London Road through to from Escort Road roundabout through to Arle Court, and we hope to be on site by the end of this year with that scheme, if not earlier. And that will then join up with the work that's currently going on, that I've just described to you, on the A40 with the cycle scheme there, which would then mean that we then got a cycle scheme that will go from the edge of Gloucester, from Black Lion Way, all the way through to the other side to the train station in Cheltenham. That would join up all the colleges, all the university, the 2 hospitals and the 2 rail stations, as well as obviously a lot of employment opportunities and other things in between. Our aim is, we've got a bid into Levelling Up Fund to take that part of the scheme from Black Dog Way back to the canal towpath by Clantony Road, which would then enable that to join on to the towpath that goes all the way down to Sewell Junction, which and then from Sewell Junction there's a section being built then out to Stroud. So you can see how the whole lot is starting to join together quite rapidly. The ITU public transport and school transport there, there's the new Bus Back Better Fund strategy, which we're working on, and the funding that comes from that. There's also, although not put down here, we had secured £1.3 million for the responsive public transport system for Cotswold and Forest of Dean from the government, one of those 17 in the country, and that will allow us from next year to provide a demand responsive service to the more rural areas in Cotswold and in Forest of Dean. We're going to purchase four minibuses to provide that service, and that will run for 2 years at no cost to the council. So it's a good way of actually testing to see if that does help really start to join people up from issues around rural isolation. E-scooter trial has been going very well, and although it's sort of early days of this year, we're already recorded the second highest number of rides in a week a few weeks ago in Cheltenham. So that's progressing quite well. The B4603, as I just alluded to, it was also covered under active travel as well. Obviously, the strategic infrastructure is quite a big scheme. It probably will come out at around about £14-15 million in total, and we're aiming to move that. We're moving that forward at the moment. We've got designs carried out, and effectively, despite early criticisms, we brought in 3 critical friends to look at the work we've done, the work the Highways England done, because we inherited the scheme from the Highways England. And as a result of that, both Sustrans and Department for Transport now have actually said that they are very impressed with the work we are doing, and it's completely in line with what they expected. They'd originally judged us on Highways England work, which was unfair, because we were bidding for a scheme and included the Highways England design, because we'd not had a chance to redo it ourselves. But now our new scheme is designed to be the new regulation compliant, which is 120, the new guidance. So we're fully compliant with that, and acknowledged by both government and Sustrans to that effect. Junction 9, M5 Junction 9, obviously critical junction improvement for a number of different reasons, and not least, obviously, it provides the link for the Garden Town, the Tewkesbury Garden Town, to be built. That at the moment, I've just sent lobbying letters off to MHCLG and DFT, pleading really for government, for a bit of joined up government for the two areas to work together rather than sit there waiting for one to pay for the work and to the other one's advantage, and say, look, you need to both get into this because it's to the advantage of both Highways England and MHCLG and DFT to deliver this scheme for a number of different reasons. So we just sent that letter off recently, and they've come back and asked for a meeting with both organisations and ourselves. So hopefully some level of positivity there will come. A417, as you know, that took a jump forward last year when funding was announced. It then took a small jump back when National Trust objected to the green bridge that was being put in. That's now been resolved, and they have now, literally about a week or so ago, they put a plan application in for the Development Controller for the DCO, that was submitted to the Plan Inspector in June 21. So that's obviously seriously moving forward now. LTP was approved by full council in March, which is our strategy for the next 19 years to 2040. But already this is how things change. Already there's things that we're saying we need to reinforce that. We need to look at bits like that, particularly around the cycling and road safety in particular. Local plans, I think we've really covered in Ben's presentation, but obviously, as mentioned, there's a review of the JCS now currently underway, and we are pressing that within that review they take account of our concerns around seal as part of that, and that's part of that piece of work, that separate piece of work that's being ongoing. The Stroud local plan is out for consultation at the moment, and we have already registered our concerns about two aspects of Wadden and Sharpness in the local plan, which we do not believe are sustainable within the current proposals. That's a GCC perspective. Libraries obviously are now starting to go back under what will be from next Monday, fully open and responding. And registration is still really under the cosh with the changes in rules and registration, and not least obviously is the fact that all the doors are thrown open and there's a mass panic for everyone who's been delaying or putting off weddings to now try and get weddings as soon as possible, and which is putting the registration staff under a lot of pressure. Waste management, the waiting times for the appointments at the household recycling centres, as of right today we wrote this report was the 23rd of June. Next day appointments are available at all of our 5 HRCs now. We have, with COVID being relaxed, we've started to release additional spaces so we don't keep a space between every car that pulls in, and that alone has already made a massive difference in terms of capacity. So now we've got the advantage of actually a booking system that people seem to be liking. 70 to 80% of people were in favour of keeping it after COVID, but without the delays as well. So you can actually book now within 1 day at this time of year, which is a busy time of year, which I think is a real positive for people. We've just secured a 10-year contract, 8+2 years, for the processing of food waste. And would you believe we've got that contract for nothing? The contractor's doing it, processing all our food waste, because they make their money from the methane that's produced and collection of the gas, and also what's left for what is remaining as a fertiliser, which they sell on both, and that's how they make their money. And so the only thing we've got to do now is a contract going out shortly for transporting that food waste from the different districts back to that processing centre. And again, we're going to make that an 8+2 year contract, so it aligns with the food contract. Well, unfortunately, we won't get that one for nothing, but yeah, it's the actual processing costs is a really big positive for us, or lack of costs, I should say. So on that food waste, we will probably be looking to use Yubico, because what we've realised is that their prices are already cheaper or slightly less than the commercial rate, but we can actually achieve efficiencies of operation as well, because they Yubico at the moment look after our HRCs, and they have bulking vehicles that they move our products around with HRCs, and we can use those same bulking vehicles when they're not being used to go to the districts to pick up the food waste. So we can use the same vehicles under our existing contracts. So we will be using Yubico almost certainly for that contract going forward, which is a Teckle company partly owned by GCC. Plans are being finalised at the moment for the reopening of the visitor centre at the Energy from Waste. So we'll start to be able to have school children in, and very shortly, and start opening the visitor centre properly for the first time since the plant was finished, because as it was finished was when COVID hit us. And we're putting responsive to the government on their latest extended producer responsibility for packaging waste, and on the deposit return system for drinks packaging. Adult education service, we are starting to return now to a sort of blend of virtual and actual presence for carrying out tutoring and lectures. What we're also doing, we're very conscious of the impact of COVID as part of the economic recovery. So during the summer, Adult Ed will be running courses for maths and English at levels 1 and 2, which they wouldn't normally do. We've noticed over the last few months those courses are already full. Level 1 or 2 is basically at O level, and what we're noticing, more and more organisations are becoming more and more fussy about having levels 1 and 2. So people who have lost their jobs due to COVID can't even get back into the same jobs in some places, particularly in the hospitality sector and things like that, because people are now saying, well, we want maths and English at levels 1s and 2s. So we're running adult education courses right through the summer, deliberately to give as much capacity as possible to help those people, and school leavers who haven't got an O level to access the basic qualifications to be able to get onto apprenticeships or access jobs. And what we're also looking to do is run courses, specific courses that are more aimed at, rather than normal generic courses, aimed at helping young people in particular, but at all levels, into employment. So we'll be running courses during the summer for hospitality and retail, again, specifically aimed towards the Gloucestershire offer. And the other thing that's going on at the moment is, one of our aims is I'm bringing together all the different skills areas with Adult Ed to create an employment and skills hub, initially in Gloucestershire, in Gloucester town, in Gloucester City, alongside and with the adult education function. So people go in, it'll be a one-stop shop. They can go in, they can be pointed to where there's jobs, where there's apprenticeship opportunities, where there's kickstart opportunities. And if they haven't got the basic skills to get in, we can also then put them straight into Adult Ed, where they can then get that additional qualification or experience they need to be able to access those jobs. And our aim will be using the libraries to then roll those out where possible out into the district, so that we don't have to bring everyone into the county city, into Gloucester. We can actually, using our libraries, run some of those courses outside to make sure that we help with rural isolation and travelling, particularly for those people maybe 17 years of age, haven't got access to a car or transport to get to Gloucester. So we actually take the courses to them and help them with their opportunities in the future getting into employment. And that is the conclusion. Thank you.
Colin, thank you. Very thorough. Team, questions, queries? I saw Alan and then Chris.
Thanks, Chairman. Colin, just a very quick one. You'll recall the Lydney Alberton cycle links. I had a meeting with my highways manager the other week. Apparently, we're still struggling to get the snagging done in the actual finished articles signed off. Could you just have a look at that for me at some time,
Sure.
please? Thank you.
Sure, Alan. I didn't. Sorry, I missed the. I heard the bit, the actual, the critical point. There was what actual scheme it was. I didn't quite catch it. What you said.
Yeah, sorry, Colin. It's the Lydney Elberton
Lydney.
cycle scheme. Yes, it was funded by the LEP a couple of years ago
Oh,
now.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm talking to Bry Watkins. We're still struggling to get it signed off, I think, and the snagging difficulties looked at.
And who are you dealing with? Sorry.
I've been talking
Ray
to the local
Watkins.
highways manager. Yes, I think we've lost the officer. The officer left the council at the back end of the May, and that was Rich Lloyd. But it was still at a position that there are still a number of stagger difficulties, including white lines that have already lifted. We just need somebody to really talk to the highways manager, myself, to get these difficulties sorted out.
Okay, I'll go on to that. No problem.
Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report, Colin. There's a massive amount of information there, and please, I beg to be forgiven for not. It takes a hell of a long time to read every report and every link, and so some of my questions may be just out of naivety or just simply because I haven't had time to go into everything in detail. As a new councillor, a new county councillor, it would take a while to read everything.
Chris, I have the same trouble when all the reports come past me to read all my staff's reports and check them properly. So I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah, I think we're in an age where information is overloading, and we spend all our time trying to catch up instead of living the good life. The tree strategy, is that available?
The tree strategy, is that available?
Because there are mentions of it.
It's. Do you know what? I'm going to
is it just something you instinctively go by, but nothing's been written down on it?
Do you know what? I was just going to say that I think it's been written down in different documents. It's been written down in the action plan for the climate change, but I'm not sure. And there's a committee report on it, but I'm not sure as such. I'm going to look at Ben if Ben can remember. I'm not sure we've actually got a tree strategy as such, have we, Ben?
I was just going to ask for clarification. Is that regarding the tree strategy for climate change or the tree strategy for the ash dieback?
A tree strategy for the county, including climate change, carbon sequestration, and obviously, amenity tree planting along highways as a replacement for ash dieback. But the right tree in the right place. But numbers, areas, plans, timelines, resources, costs, implications on volunteer groups, liaison with parish and town councils. Some sort of tree strategy.
We have
it's referred to.
Ash dieback we have because that's specific, so we know. Basically we can't put all a 2-to-1 offer. We can't put all the trees back that we take out. And what we're doing,
I'm aware of that. I'm just wondering whether there is an overarching strategy.
No, there isn't
that
at
we
the
can
moment.
refer to.
The reason for that is that initially we hooked onto the GLNP strategy, the Gloucestershire Local Nature Partnership strategy, but what I've decided to do is that we need to develop our own one for the county against the 1 million trees that we'll be delivering towards their 35 million target. There's a lot of talk about this 35 million is actually GLNP's target for the county. We're using all the partners. What we've always said we'd do is we would deliver 1 million trees, which is a stretch target for a county. And it's not the cost of the tree. You can put a whip in for about £1. You can put a whip in that's water looked after, has got a plastic sheath around it and looks after for its first 18 months of its life with a guarantee on it for about £4. That's nothing. It's the land that costs the money, getting hold of the land. And that's where the real challenge is at the moment. So we're not being able to put a tree strategy together as such because it's like trying to work out where the land is and where the money's coming from. I mean, at the moment we've been trying to build the pot. We've just successfully secured £300,000 from Woodland Trust on a leveraged bid. So that's given us a pot of money to start do that piece of work. So now we've got a piece of that chunk of money. My aim now is to start to build up the picture about where we go. The problem I've had is my climate change officer has been off sick since January. So as he says in the report, we've just actually taken on one of the national graduates. Plus, we're advertising for another member of staff, and I've also moved another member of staff from the work they were doing on electric vehicles, into looking after the trees deliberately to try and strengthen that team to try and move that tree strategy forward. But we actually haven't got a written strategy as such at the moment. There's little bits and pieces of it in different places in response to different things, but there's not an overarching strategy as such.
Okay, is it possible for this committee to ask for?
By all means.
So that, you know, we unify the disparate elements of tree growing and tree planting in the county, and make reference to other organisations and their contributions, so that at least we know where we are. You know, we might not have the land, but at least we know that we're looking for the land and how we're going to go about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would at a strategic level, I would also like us to look at things like, you know, given the fact, we're just talking about flooding, an area that can really assist with flooding is reed beds, you know, given the fact we've got a great big river that runs right to the centre of the county, and a lot of that is floodplain, you know, to look at reed beds which actually can sequester carbon far quicker, far more effectively than trees, is something I'd also like to look at in parallel.
Yeah,
David, I think you were trying to get in there.
Yeah.
I just want to follow up on Chris's suggestion, but Colin was kind of started down the track I was going to suggest. We do need to come up with a document that captures what we're going to do on trees, but I think it needs to be a wider document than just focusing on trees, because I do think we want to go down the biodiversity, CO2 capture, hedges, reeds, wetlands, and, you know, it needs to be tied in with the flood management, upstream sequestration, if you like, of water. So the exact nature of that, but I think that's something, Colin, you and I need to go away with some of our colleagues and pull together in a coherent form, because I'm also keen that we get to maybe sort of what we termed a dashboard, so that there are measures there that we're agreed, and this is the right committee, that we bring this back to what those measures are. And I've started drafting that out, and it's quite a long list of things. Some of them quantitative, some of them qualitative, that we need to capture to show that we have the right momentum. We have momentum in the right directions, and where we're succeeding and where we've got holes going forward. So I think that's something, guys. That's something that yes, good. That's good news. Okay, that we will come back to you at some point in the future. Biodiversity is -1 horsefly. They've managed to capture a horsefly as a kid.
Great. Can I come back on that, Chair?
Please do, Chris. Nice to have a bit of real world coming in, David.
Absolutely. The more the better. Yeah. I'll bring my dog in a minute. Yeah, David, that's absolutely fine. You know, and I agree that we need to cover all those other areas that you just mentioned. My concern is that we're making it too big, and it will never actually be done. You know, so I was just thinking of picking the low-lying fruit, as it were, and going for a tree strategy, and then looking at a carbon strategy and a biodiversity one, which we need. But obviously we need the resource. You know, if the climate change officer has been away for 6 months, then, you know, obviously there's a staffing problem there. So, you know, I was just asking if we can maybe focus on a tree strategy, but keep the others in mind. In fact,
yeah, no, absolutely, we will want to demonstrate progress and to go to your low-hanging fruit metaphor. We will be looking for the low-hanging fruit because it is about building momentum. And if things are too long-term, then we'll run out of energy. So it's more important that we start. The number of trees that we've put in, the acreage that we've contracted on, the organisations that we've teamed up with, the programs that we've sponsored. There are lots and lots of bits to it. It's just I need to agree with the officers how we format it and how we take it forward.
Great. Okay. Thank you. I've got some other questions, Dom. I'm afraid.
That's okay. Spill your boots, Chris.
Okay. I'm not a businessman in any way or form. That's why I'm a naturalist. How does the development of a business case, this is in 4.2 highways, how does the development of a business case for the M5 Junction 9 and A46 cost 2 to 3 million, the business case alone? Maybe I don't mix in those circles, but that seems a lot of money just to develop a business case for the actual development itself. But going on from that, I would also like to see the county, because we've declared a climate emergency, we know things are happening pretty fast. Just look at Canada last month. Can we also develop a carbon audit so that we develop a carbon case to accompany the economic business case for developments, particularly large developments, so that we understand that we're not adding to the problem, but we're mitigating the carbon emissions that will be created from construction of that development in the first place, and how we, what the implications are for climate change and our climate emergency targets. Does that seem a reasonable request? I know it's not easy, and I know that you are doing it in various disparate ways as some developments come up. But I think right across the board, since we have declared a climate emergency and we've got sort of targets, 80% reduction by 2030, I think, is for the county, just for the county council. Can we not see some form of performance monitoring using a carbon calculator to look at what emissions are and how we're mitigating those emissions or offsetting them to make the projects carbon neutral? And that's to Colin.
I mean, we have, in terms of our target for the county council as an organisation, as a corporate body, we are. I think we're at around about 80% now. With our aim that by the end of this year we'll actually be, or early next year, up to 100%. That's correct, isn't it, Ben? It is, yeah.
I believe so, Colin. Yeah.
As a county, i.e. the county geographical area, not a corporate body, what you said is correct. But then, unlike we as a corporate body, what we are directly responsible for and we can immediately measure and have some level of control over, when it gets outside our own immediate boundary of control, then we are very reliant on feedback and partnerships and others coming to the table and providing us with information, which then becomes incredibly difficult. It's been incredibly difficult over the last year. One of the reasons why we've not moved the climate change action plan forward in the way that I would like to was a lot of that, something like climate change, I'm sure you're pretty, Chris, can never be done by one organisation. It's got to be done by everyone being brought together. And the one thing we've not been able to do over the last year because of COVID is bring, just when we finished the document was January last year, and by the time we were just ready to start building all the partnerships was when we got our legs cut off with COVID. And the one thing we couldn't really do then was bring those people together in the way we wanted to. And that has had an impact without a doubt. I mean, that's put us back probably. We've done some virtual, but not to the level I'd like. And it is very, I mean, that one, the one you've just said, yes, we can do that. And we've got something very similar to that, what you're talking about carbon calculator as a corporate body. But for a county, that is something we can look into, but I'm not sure how easy. I think it could be very, very difficult to do with the resources we have available to be able to do that. But it's something we'll look into.
Okay, I think, you know, I take your point. My concern is that the responsibility for carbon auditing will fall between two stools. It's neither the county council nor a district or borough responsibility, and as a result of that, carbon emissions just accelerate, you know, into the future. And we miss our targets, and we say, well, we're sorry we missed our targets, but it was too difficult.
It was someone else's fault.
You know,
and it's one of the reasons
too difficult. Unfortunately, in this crisis, too difficult is not an excuse.
No, I agreed entirely, and it's why a year ago I suggested, and with great difficulty, would you believe, suggested and managed to pull it off eventually for the county to put 50% of the funding in, or 60% funding. The other, I think it was 5,000 each, was then put in by the districts to appoint a county coordinating climate change officer.
Which you have done, yeah.
Again, that's being delayed. That was then taken out of GCC hands, and it was agreed that Gloucester would lead that rather than Gloucestershire County Council. John McGinty's been appointed to that. But again, because of COVID, it's taken him probably about 9 to 10 months to deliver that post. She started about 4 weeks ago, Africa Moon. She's just started, and her first role is basically making contact with all those key players. So it's something that I will make sure is fed back through her to start to look at from a county-wide coordinating perspective.
Okay. I won't let this one go, as people recognise. It is one of the most important topics that we have to look at. But you know, I don't want developments going ahead without any form of carbon audit taking place, because we'll be penalised for it in some way or form.
Well, I think J10 and J9 will both have very extensive environmental impacts, and I mean massive. I think you could ask about the business case. Some of the factors which are expensive is because the extensive environmental impacts that are now undertaken as part of those schemes.
Yeah, and rightly so.
But that's where the money goes. I mean, you've got environmental impacts, you've got biodiversity impacts, you've got carbon. That's just on the environmental side, as well as obviously that includes the design, the outline design, concept design, feasibility design through a detailed design. That all of that money, that's all part of that business case. You've got pre-strategic outline business case, strategic outline business case, and then outline business case just before you even get to the fund, actually be able to put the bid in. That's where the money goes.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, and I'm talking to Scott about all of those things, and it just takes time for me to get up to speed on the environmental impact assessments, etc. But my point was quite simple. Can we look at developing a carbon audit system for all our developments, and potentially the developments that we share with the districts and the boroughs? I've got another one on the scorecards at the end of your report, which I like performance indicators really. Overall, resident satisfaction with a highways network is around 52%. In my book, that's pretty poor.
Yeah.
If as a scrutiny committee, we're holding the cabinet to account, as it were, only 50% of people in the county are satisfied with the conditions of the road network. What do we do about it? Do we just suck it up and say, well, you know, climate, resources, you know, tough?
Well, first of all, it's something we've been working towards. I mean, this is really great. I don't want to give a lecture on this, but
no, I don't either, because I'm aware of time.
We've been in austerity for 10 years, And, in austerity situations, what happens is the county put money, and all authorities put their money into the immediate visible things they have to do, like education, like adult social care, etc. And the thing that tends to get cut back heaviest, quickest is things like highways, because you don't have an immediate impact. It doesn't hit you straight away. But what happens is over extended periods. So, the chicken comes home to roost, shall we say, because you can't keep doing it forever. You can't keep getting away with not putting any money in. But it's a very good quick fix. Over the last couple of years, the chicken has really come home to roost. And the county has put additional money in, about £40 million over the last, out of its own coffers, over the last 4 years. And almost all of that money substantially has gone into bringing up the A and B category roads up to, I would regard now as a very good standard. And in fact, the indicators are showing that the zero residual life now of A and B roads is around about 3.5% to 4%, which is really where you should be, or what you want it to be, because you expect a road to last about 25 years. So at any 1 year, you would expect about 4% of your road stock and assets to go into zero residual life, ready for renewal. So we have got back to where we should, from a base of probably 4 years ago, before I started. But I believe around that time it was around about 14-15% zero residual life. So we've got on top of that one. But that's where all the focus is. Of course, what people, and particularly as councillors, when you go around knocking on people's doors and run up to elections, what people talk about very quickly is the road outside their house, which invariably is an unclassified road. It's the cul-de-sac, it's the residential road, or maybe the country lane that goes to 3 houses. And when you're in a recovery situation, you do what is most important first for the economy and what gives you the biggest bangs for your buck. So obviously where we put our emphasis was onto those A and B category roads, because they carry the majority of the traffic. There's acknowledgement right across the board by the cabinet, by Mark, and by officers as well, that our zero residual life now on our unclassified roads are around about 16-17%. So and that was the survey carried out at the end of last year. My own view is probably it's far worse than that, because what we had was the perfect storm in December and January. To put it into perspective, I had frontline crews that were non-stop working from the week before Christmas right through the Christmas and New Year period to the third / fourth week in February, with first of all the flooding and the surface water flooding, which all invariably end up in the roads, blocked the gullies up. Then that was immediately followed by a 2-week freeze period, and then followed by snow. So it's the worst of all combinations. The snow, before we actually cleared it, was washed away by another deluge of rain for 2 weeks, which has soaked the roads and drenched everything, followed by another freeze, followed by snow that was so heavy that time in February that we had to have ploughs fitted. And that, by then, what's left of the road surface when the plough goes across, which just finishes it off completely, because those roads that were already at the end of their life were just crazed all over the place. So the water went in through the cracks and the crazing, then it froze, just bush, and it all came up, the freeze thaw expansion, and it's gone everywhere. So we know that we were repenting between the 1st of January and the end of April. We put 16,000. We did 16,000 pothole repairs. But we're doing 1,000 a week. Now that normally finishes by April, even on a bad year, and May at the worst. In June, we did 5,500 potholes in June. Like that's 2 years after, two months after the end of last financial year. We never ever carry over into the summer period that much in the new financial year. That's the damage that was done to the roads during the winter, and it's invariably all the older roads that haven't been renewed, that were at the end of their life anyway, and it's just accelerated rapidly. So we are conscious of the fact that what we need to do now is put some concentrated effort back up, and the members and Mark are very much aware that they're going to try and put additional fund into highways to try and focus in on the unclassified road network, try and start to repair them and bring them up to a standard.
Okay, thank you, Colin. I've just got one final one, Dom, if I may. It's on waste.
Chris, before you go on to that waste one, Colin, I just wanted to pick up on this, and I'm useful for the explanation, but if I'm honest, it doesn't really help. I think there's a real dissonance in your highways report here. The front page says that everything's on target in terms of maintenance and services and structural maintenance, but that's just not my experience on the front line. And my sense is that the highways system is just not automated. Customers are just not having any satisfaction. We can't track repairs, and I really do want to get stuck into this as an item on the next committee. I just don't see what I'm seeing on the ground in this report, and I think I'll leave it there because I don't want to ambush you, but I want to get after this in the next committee meeting. And the key thing is the dissonance. This report just does not feel like what I'm seeing, and from the body language of members on this call, I think they'd agree with me. Over to you on waste, Chris, I think.
Yeah, thank you on that, Dom. Yeah, absolutely. I think some of these are big issues which we're bouncing officers with, which isn't fair. But absolutely, we need to keep on this and bring it up at the next meeting as well, and see how we can improve on those customer satisfaction figures, which aren't good at the moment. On waste, we've got residual household waste at about 450 kilograms, which is about half a ton. How are we working with the districts to implement the waste hierarchy, at the top of which is waste reduction or prevention of waste? Because we all know that if we can prevent the waste at the start of the pipeline, as it were, we can save on costs all the way down at the end of the pipeline, with collecting it, burning it, which is crazy, but landfilling it, recycling it even. How do we prevent the waste at the start? And that requires an educational campaign and behaviour shift amongst the residents of the county. How are we, as the Waste Disposal Authority, working with the districts to really emphasise that first part of the hierarchy, that top part?
The original waste committee was disbanded last year and has been replaced by a waste partnership. As part of that waste partnership, there is a sort of deal agreement that that a certain amount of the money that is available within that will be used for education and joint promotion across the county, working with the districts to do that. We have just appointed, only in the last, she hasn't started yet, in the last couple of weeks, a member of staff whose focus will be very much about, I actually wanted a behavioural change scientist, but I was told that it could be too politically embarrassing if we had started appointing people called behavioural change, though it's something that's becoming quite, there's a whole area of it in University College London now that specialise in this sort of work, which is about how you, from every level, from sustainable transport through to waste, how you win the hearts and minds of people to start to change the attitudes, to get them to behave and act in a way that's responsible from the start. And part of that role will be working very much towards, in fact, it's a shared office between my sustainable transport unit and the waste, to start to win the hearts and minds, to gain that foothold and credibility of getting the message out to the wider world about, it's not about recycling is the answer. Recycling is still, a little bit further down. It's basically minimisation and reuse before you get to that. And it's about using that, getting that waste hierarchy knowledge out into the wider world, which I completely agree with you, Chris. And that's virtue. If we do that, it's virtue to everybody. Not only climate change, but also to the budgets of the council as well, and to the districts.
It's a no-brainer if it works. Yeah, I do recall I was with the Waste Partnership a couple of years back, representing Forest, and one of the savings that was made by the county was not appointing an education officer for waste, which seemed absolutely insane at the time. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Dom.
No dramas, Chris. That's what we're here for. Any other hands? I think Jill's got her hand up. Over to you, Jill.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, just a comment to Colin, too, actually. Some of us actually knock on doors apart from election time, but I'll just go on to other things. I have over hundreds of farms, small and large, in my division, and I've become recently very aware of the need for soil conservation and proper management. Again, Matt Marston's Severn Trent webinars have been very interesting on that respect, and I wonder if that could be added to your long list, although I realise that we need to prioritise. So to the other 2 points that I want to make, one is a procedural one and the other one is a flag waiver. So the procedural one, could we please, the first time, and bearing in mind that this is a public meeting and some of us are new, could we please, when we use abbreviations and acronyms, say what it is in full the first time? Because there have been one or two that I've had to think hard about since we started here. That's that. The other one is I'm going to wave a big flag for Newent, and I have to say that I am really, really disappointed at the travel plan. Before I was elected as a councillor to the county council, as a district councillor with my colleague Vilnius Vesma for Newent, we responded to the review of the local transport plan, pointing out that the B4215 to Newent was in fact a busier road than the A40. And yet it doesn't appear very prominently at all in the transport plan. And although it's too late to do anything about it, the present edition, I do hope that will be picked up. And I don't know whether Colin's got any comments about to respond with regard to that. It was perhaps just not flagged up enough by enough people, but I know Newent in the response chart had quite a lot of responses, including from the NDP, for which I'm chair. Thank you.
So sorry, Joe, I didn't catch it. What was the one that you said is as busy as the
B4215, the road to Newent and to the access to the reason it's so busy is not because it's going to Newent. We'd love to have all that many visitors. It's because it's the access to a junction on the M50. Yeah, 3.5 miles further on. Okay, thank you.
Colin, can I make a suggestion that you take that offline? I'm really conscious of people's time, and you know, we've all got issues going on in our divisions that we want answers to. But if we can take that offline and crack on. Are there any other?
I was going to, Chair.
Yeah, mega. Thank you, Roger. I think you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Obviously, the question of highway repair has been raised, and it's on next time's agenda. So I won't go into lots of things, but the one thing I wanted to raise now, because a number of members have raised it with me when I started asking around what your problems are. Highway drains seems to be a significant issue, certainly amongst those members of the Liberal Democrat group I've spoken to, and I suspect that's not in any way party political, because it seems to be both urban and rural, and particularly where it involves the CCTV. And what seems to happen is that you flag a problem, and eventually, after badgering because you're in the queue and your local highway manager is in a queue as well, you get something scheduled. They come along, allow 1 day for however many areas they can look at in 1 day, and do some areas and leave others, and very often don't solve the problems. And we have a number in our division where they have visited at least twice, and they're now on their third visit this week. And I'm really just wondering whether there is something fairly fundamental going wrong with this process, because it doesn't seem to be very successful or yielding us the kind of results that residents want.
Can I cut in there, Roger? Can we put that in? Can we load that into the next session as an exam question, for want of a better expression?
Yes, by all means, because when I raised the subject of highway repair generally, that wasn't part of it. I was focused more on potholes and signage and various, but that's clearly another part of it, and I would entirely agree with you, Dom. Let's do that.
I think that's perhaps the better, more constructive way for us to do that, is to flag perhaps our key exam questions to Colin and his team before it comes before us in September. Conscious of time, is there anything else that we want to ask Colin on this report before we crack on? Not seeing. Go on then, Phil.
Not particularly related to the report, but given the absolute gridlock that this county faced yesterday in relation to yet another closure of the M5, I've been certainly bombarded by social media saying what happens in those situations as regards traffic management. Shouldn't it be the case that if we're aware that the main arterial road through the county is going to be closed for a number of hours, that anybody out working on the rest of the diversion network should come off to allow the traffic to flow, rather than have HGVs standing quarter of an hour at a time, belching out black smoke to move a yard and then belching out black smoke again. If we're serious about it, can we not look at some sort of traffic management system that when these things happen, we react? I know it's Highways England in relation to the M5, but they push onto our networks. And yesterday, I think anybody in the county would agree, was absolute chaos yet again. Just a thought.
I mean, we do that, Phil, and I can name a number of recent examples where the M5 has been closed and we've responded accordingly with works. But sometimes the warning we get is less than a member of the public. Sometimes we hear about it when the public start phoning us, and sometimes, to be honest, it's not even Highways England. The police will just take a decision and close the junction. They'll just do a rolling roadblock, shut, and everything's going off before you, and that's it. It's not their problem anymore. They want the road blocked. That's it. And we pick up the end pieces from that. And I've got WhatsApp messages that go on for pages from yesterday where all my staff are out testing different bits of the road, seeing where they could move or not move, diversions and that sort of thing. And where we can, we will. But it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, particularly if it's there's major works going on. You've taken the road surface off, and it's not even got your ramps in yet or anything like that. How do you suddenly reopen the road? And certainly you've got lumps of metal stuck out the road. All your ironwork still stuck out the road. You just can't suddenly reverse something you're in the middle of doing. And if you think about it, for the most part, our major works we're always trying to carry out at night and at weekends. So if we're doing it during the day, it's invariably because we've got no other bloody option but to do it during the day. So therefore, it gives you a clue. There's not many other options available to us. So it's one of those ones where it always reminds me of the Carling advert, which is if only Carling did roadworks, where they open up the trench and they're putting electric cables in, gas pipelines, and then the undertaker comes along and drops a coffin in as well, all into one utility hole. But if only the world could be that well coordinated. But the reality is that we all talk to one another, but it is a lot more difficult than probably initially seems. I know that's what seemed to be ideal. And as I said, we had staff actually going out driving the routes yesterday to feed back as to where we could or could not make improvements to try and ease that congestion. And we have on numerous occasions removed or stopped roadworks where we could.
For that, you mentioned Highways England, and I'll just put a quick question here. How much notice did they give you extending that 12-month closure to a 15-month closure in relation to their work on the bridge at Old Gloucester Road? How much advance?
It just came up as part of I don't think they went out of their way to tell us. I think it just came up as part of a programming meeting we found out.
For a member to criticise Highways England, then thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Thank you to you and your team for such a comprehensive report. Really useful.
Dom, Susan had a hand up as well.
She did. Susan, if you have your hand up, over to you. I can't see that. Apologies if I missed it.
No, that's fine. Actually, some of the questions that I had wanted to ask have been answered by Colin, because Councillor McFarlane and Councillor Orford had posed those questions. But just following on from the chaos yesterday, the A46, which goes through the centre of my division, Painswick, Pitchcombe to Stroud, I have been inundated, literally inundated with phone calls and emails from people that have either got lost because the diversions aren't quite clear enough. And I just wonder if lessons can be learnt, and that next time, which I think is in a few weeks, when the road will be closed again because of the ash dieback tree felling, whether more communication, better communication, and certainly being put on to websites, Facebook pages, into the council, notifications, so that actually there isn't quite so much chaos. People are very angry about this, and they don't understand, I think, the health and safety aspects of having to close the road whilst the tree's being cut. But certainly the diversions have been really appalling, and I have to just raise that on behalf of the constituents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. I'm sorry I missed you. Still getting used to done more on Teams and Zooms, and the little handies on this one are tricky. Unless I've missed any little handies, I think that's it for item 5 on the agenda. I'd like to crack onto item 6, which is the work plan, pages 43 to 44 in people's packs. And I love it when a plan comes together. Very grateful to Sophie and the team for having the highway repair session in for September. I think that's useful timing. I think just to update people, there's been a lot of toing and froing, and perhaps Colin would like to quickly explain the logic on it, but we're going to move, it's been proposed that we move climate change target session to November to give the team time to prepare for it. So the current schedule is for 2 sessions in September, highways repair and motion 876, which is around speeding, and then move the climate change target session to November. And in addition, I've received a draft letter which will be sent to the council leaders of Gloucestershire, Wiltshire and Swindon with regards to the extraction of minerals and cumulative environmental impact assessments of those current and future mineral extraction sites. So that's the work plan as is. Chris, you've got your hand up.
Just slightly concerned about the moving of the climate change targets. Always in an emergency, you do have to act urgently, and I understand that there's a resource implication to do that. COP26 will be taking place at that time or just before then. Whether that has a bearing on climate change targets or not, I don't know. It's just an observation I make that we are in a climate emergency, and therefore we need to be treating it with urgency. Thank you.
Chris, I'm not one to slope shoulders, but that was almost my exact words to Colin on this. So Colin, did you want to set out your case for why you've gone for this timetable? Because as you and I discussed, I do share those concerns, but there are reasons. You do have thoughtful reasons as to this change in timeline. So did you want to sort of tell the rest of the committee for their benefit your view?
Sure, Chair. Yeah, I mean, Dom argued quite strongly that we should make it September rather than November, and I felt I was in a dichotomy. I'll be honest with you, because bear in mind, if you remember the last climate change, the last environmental scrutiny committee, it was me who suggested we should have that challenge on climate change, and raised it. But there is sometimes, well, first of all, we had the highways one has been, the highways one, as you saw today, has been biting everyone's backside, to put it in that format, for the last several months, and it's been a real hot topic, raised numerous times at full council and cabinet and others, and numerous council questions and cabinet questions. And then the other one obviously had to be heard, which is the 20-mile-per-hour zone. And those are two really meaty subjects. And they had really no other option but to be on September for that obvious reason. And what would have happened is climate change would have gone onto that agenda and would have been squeezed very, very heavily. And could you just bear with me a second? My battery's about to go flat, would you believe, at all times. Apologies for that before I disappeared off the face of the earth. Right. Yeah, sorry. That in itself would have caused, would have meant that the climate change, I think is incredibly important, would have got squeezed in that agenda. And I don't think would have done it justice. I don't think the other aspect to it is that throw any challenge you want to me at the moment, and I will come back with, I've not had a chance to grab hold of that at the moment because of COVID, and whether it be sickness through COVID, whether it be staff being off through COVID, whether it be the partnerships through COVID. And what I felt was if you're really going to, you're not going to another chance this year probably to delve into it. If we're going to do it, let's do the job properly and let's see what we have or haven't achieved. Now, we've got 2 new staff starting the next few weeks. I've transferred the guy from EV over to look at the other work we're doing at the moment to try and reinforce that team. The other guy, the other person is still off, resource-wise. Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, and Africa Moon has only been in post for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And I felt that if you did it too soon, there would be a lot of excuses without not much movement. And yeah, I mean, there's one obvious one that I can immediately say straight away is, well, what about resources? Have you got adequate resources? Well, I think there's a clue there already, but everyone's going to hide behind, COVID. So my felt was if we left it to November, we would have a full session on climate change and really give it a chance to have a hearing. And at the same time, we would have had at least August, September, October for the committee report, 3 months, where it's not a lot of time, but it gives a chance to try and see what the new team can try and deliver against the action plan over the next 3 months, to see what we can get hold of, what isn't achievable, and then we can have probably a more balanced conversation and a realistic view about what needs to happen if we're going to take climate change seriously and move it forward in the future. Where at the moment, if we did it too quick, everything we blamed on COVID and we wouldn't be any further forward.
Chris, you want to come back?
I sympathise with you, Colin. COVID and lack of resources, if that means that we don't progress with our climate action plan, it's not good enough, really. You look at the temperatures in Canada last month, 50 degrees centigrade. If we get that this summer, And what do we say? Oh, well, we haven't moved our climate action plan forward because of COVID. You know, I know what you're saying. I desperately know what you're saying. So please forgive me if I'm snapping at your heels in the forthcoming months, because yeah, I will do it in the nicest possible way, if that's okay. And if I can contribute to making progress, then I will do.
Yeah, I mean, you know, what do you do when you have? When I started, there wasn't even anyone working on climate change 2.5 years ago. You know, I've had to gradually start to build a team up from nothing, and then in the middle of it, the guy who was the key lever goes off sick. And now with the same resources, I'm trying to put other people in to reinforce that team. We have got an action plan. I think we've got quite a strong action plan. But and last year we did deliver against it remarkably well. This year has been not particularly good at all. What my view is I have no intention of changing the action plan. That's a 5-year rolling action plan. So it's all the time it's live, all the time it's being updated. It never stands still. And effectively, you know, when that's reviewed in cabinet in December or January, I think it's January actually goes up. You know, we will stand or fall by that, and there'll be excuses in, but by then we'll be 6 months after COVID finished, and then, well, why haven't you caught up? And then I'll stand or fall by that, and I'll probably fall because of the situation we're in. But at least then we can have a realistic conversation about what is being expected to be done with the resources being put in. At the moment, I think it'll be lost in the background noise of COVID, and I don't think it will do either me, you, or anyone who feels passionate about the subject any good at all, without actually having at least, you know, everyone, we go, oh, give them a chance to see what they can do. Well, by the end of the year, we'd have had that chance, and if we'd have failed, then we've got to look at the reasons why we'd have failed. And yeah, and COVID will be a contributing factor, but I think there'll be others that will be far more key to why we didn't do what we did.
Okay. Yeah, and maybe by that time, government will have moved or shifted in its approach and its prioritisation of climate change. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Around the houses, any other thoughts? I am checking for minute hands anywhere on the symbols, and I'm not seeing any. That might be because my eyes can't stare at a screen anymore. If that's it, then we'll consider that locked in. Just to remind colleagues, the highways repair and the motion 876 in September, climate change and minerals extraction in November, which sounds quite useful to me. Sophie, bone question, the information items, that's sort of below the line agendas in terms of we're just asked to recognise, read it and understand it's going on, are we? Is that right?
That's correct, yep.
Great. Chris, you have a hand.
On possible future items, I was wondering whether we could look at hold on a sec, I had it now. Oh, damn it, where are we? Yeah, what progress has been made with the Biodiversity Task Group, and from its report in March 2019, the recommendations and considerations thereof. Could we look at where we are on that?
Sophie, is there any way we can just put that as an information update or whatever the technical term for that is?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
September.
If you could leave that one with me, and I'll discuss with colleagues and look into where we are with it and how best to shape it. And I'll get back to you on that one.
Very
okay,
useful.
and thank you. And the other one was how are we going to make sure the cycling strategy group continues to progress? I believe it was headed by councillors that are no longer with us following the election. So I don't want it to be dropped or shelved for lack of leadership or direction.
You're not going to make me get in Lycra, are you, Chris?
Oh, God forbid.
Yeah, quite.
Likewise.
Yeah, Sophie, how do you want to handle that? Is there? Can we just ask the question and just make minute that we've asked it?
Sure, I can feedback now on that. I mean,
amazing, thank you.
At the moment, we are consulting on that. I'm about to go out to consultation on that. I'm looking to I believe we need a cycling group. It needs to be reconstituted, but it needs to be more representative than across the board than one or two people who seem to feel it's their own private meeting, to be perfectly honest. And I want to make sure it's far more representative going forward in the future, and therefore can reflect people's views in a more even-handed way. Maybe sometimes not just people who live in Lycra on bikes and have got might have a slightly different view. And I think it needs to be cross-dimensional from a cycling perspective.
Obviously, I wasn't with the previous group. I wasn't party to that, so I'm coming I'm coming into this fairly clean. But I just want some sort of cycling strategy group to continue to meet and inform the council on projects going forward.
Yeah, absolutely, and that I need that as a sounding board. And as I said earlier, DFT and Sustrans have just come back and congratulated us on our approach we've adopted, and the way we've complied with the new guidance and our measures are involving external challenge. I invited people that I knew were national names deliberately to come in and act as independent assessors and challenge us as critical friends to make sure that I changed the attitude of some of the people, say at Atkins, and some of my own design engineers from a highway perspective. They thought wider than just highways. So it's a learning process for everybody, but a good challenging process to get us to where we need to be, to show where we need to be in the future, sort of thing. And in that same way, I want to reconstitute that cycling group that can do a similar job all the time, because there is no homogenous block of cyclists in many respects. The facility that you provide for a 7-year-old, maybe a bit too young, a 10-year-old, 11-year-old to get to school on their bike is different to what you would probably provide for leisure cyclists at weekends on a Sunday or whatever, which is different from what maybe me in Lycra might do on a Monday morning going to work, if you know what I mean. And we need to look at it in the round in that way and not from any one particular group.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Do you have a timeline on that?
I haven't immediately. It's as soon as possible, basically. Again, we are struggling. We're stretched to the point of breaking at the moment. But David Land has been tasked to do that. I don't know where exactly he is on that programme. And Ben, have you heard anything at all recently? No, but he's been tasked to start setting that group up.
Okay, thank you.
The letters may have already gone out to people, inviting certain people or asking for input. But it's certainly in the process of being done.
Members included.
There will be members included as well. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like one of those letters if possible, please.
Okay.
Great. Moving on, agenda-wise, in terms of item 7 and the Rivers Task Group, Sophie, is this a one-pager just to note, or can we come back with questions? Because I'm conscious we're going to get off, but I have 2 questions that I'd like to understand more. One is an insertion of to consider the enforcement opportunities on violators of river pollution rules, and the second is just to confirm who the members of this task group are, or whether the members have been confirmed. Don't know whether we want to take that now or
if we could take them offline, Dom. I'm in the process of setting up the task group, and I have had membership back from group leaders. So if we discuss it via email, we can look into that.
Really keen to include enforcement considerations on the terms of reference.
Okay.
That'd be amazing. Any more questions, queries, comments, complaints before we close the meeting? I'm not seeing any hands. I really am looking for the little hands in the corner of the boxes. If not, I will say thank you. Oh, go on then, Chris.
Thank you for chairing the first one. This one chaired it very well. I think as members of the committee, we do need to be careful that we don't become too parochial, too common, too often, because I've always found it a difficult process to actually take on the whole of the county as an oversight and not fight for my corner, my division, or my ward. But obviously, there are certain cases where local examples are useful to highlight a certain point or principle. But in the main, you know, I'm learning still, but it's useful not to use this forum to bat on about our particular problems in our divisions necessarily, but to think more strategically for the county. But thank you for chairing it.
No, Chris, loud and clear. And I think actually you've nicked one of my sandwiches on that. I was going to say to the team, thank you for today, and to say I know we're all learning on this one, but if we can drag our horizon up to what it looks like on the county side, albeit by using examples, I think that's where we'll really get cooking on gas in terms of, as a committee, adding value. So thank you, team. Sophie, I'll give you a call to summarise what we found. I don't think it's worth me trying to do it justice, given the time. Thank you to members, but also thank you to Colin, James, and Ben in particular for their appearances, but also the rest of the team behind the scenes for making today work. We appreciate it's a lot of work in tough conditions around COVID. Thank you to Sophie for being my saviour and keeping me true and honest, and having some semblance of organisation and whatever else. She does a great job of keeping me on the straight and narrow. So thank you ever so much. Hopefully we'll be able to meet in person next time. Dare I hope. Future meetings I'm tracking in the 9th of September, the 23rd. If there are no further ados, I should say thank you. Have a cracking afternoon. Bye all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye then.
Andy, could you stop the YouTube feed, please?
Will do.
Thank you.